Alrighty, what's good, everybody? Glad y'all can make it tonight. No, it's Monday night. Some of you guys are probably looking at the Monday night football game. I kind of have a little bit going on in the background myself. But hey, glad you guys could tune in, listen in. Truly appreciate the love and support. And I got some guests that are actually in the background. I'm going to be bringing these guys up right now. We got Let's Be Frank and King Sigma. What's going on, fellas?
What's going on, brother? You hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
What's going on, King Sigma? Appreciate you bringing me on, man.
Yeah, not a problem. It was a it was a kind of like a last minute thing today because to kind of give you some backdrop of what this video is about. So King Sigma actually, we was talking about this on Saturday night, a little bit of the Colin Kaepernick situation, and not to go into the whole details of it and all, but apparently the NFL did like a tryout session for Colin Kaepernick. I guess you would say a special workout just for him, and he was a no-show, didn't show up at all, and so there's kind of this a back and forth going on between his camp and the NFL camp, and then Stephen A. Smith, he kind of gave his opinion about it Saturday night. And then lo and behold, he has a back and forth with an NFL player by the name of Eric Reed. And that back and forth was kind of interesting because Eric Reed wanted to make it seem like Stephen A. Smith is a Sambo and Uncle Tom and a coon, actually called him that. And so Stephen A. Smith is like, well, you know what? That particular comment I am going to address on my afternoon show on his Stephen A. Smith show. So I knew it was going to come down the pipe on Monday today. And so he definitely devoted pretty much the first half of his show just addressing that particular situation. So tonight we're going to be looking at a few of those snippets, and he definitely hit home on a lot of issues in that topic. And so that's kind of like the backdrop of what's going on tonight.
Okay, no problem. It'll be interesting to hear what he said because I've been out of the loop for a minute.
Yeah, most definitely. And I know, Frank, you probably won't be able to stay for too long and everything, but definitely going to have this on a replay and definitely give more inputs from everybody. Also, too, courtesy of Kitty Gakade Jones, he led me to a new site that's called minds.com, and it's kind of like a different version of Twitter, so to speak. It's pretty interesting. You can pretty much kind of post, your topics on there as far as shows and contents and whatnot. So I'm going to start advertising on there as well because it's pretty neat. But definitely want to give a shout out to him because he kind of got me onto that particular type of app.
Okay, yes, I'm gonna check it out.
All right. So yeah, let me go ahead and pull up the snippet real quick. And so it's actually from He Haven't Too Long posted it probably like around noontime, Mountain Standard Time. So I was just pretty much listening in while I was at work, and he was hitting some pretty good stuff from home. And I had to say, like, even I had to kind of like chuckle hearing all his stuff we was talking about because it's like, yeah, we talk about that a lot in Black America. Well, not Black America, but over in the Black manosphere, and especially, SYSBM brothers and all. We talk about some of the stuff he's going to mention. But
you do know that a lot of those guys in the media, they follow us, man.
Oh, yeah. And honestly, I feel like Stephen A. Smith, if you was to kind of talk to in the background, I think he listened to a lot of us because a lot of the stuff he talks about is completely like Black manosphere talking points.
Well, it makes sense though, because you have to understand that we can say things that the corporate guys cannot say.
That's true. That's true. Very true.
But they steal our ideas and then they water it down because I've kind of noticed that, like you and I were talking about that Trump situation.
Mm-hmm.
I still can't get it out of my mind what I heard, man. When I heard him say that last week, that he said to black men, the Democratic Party left you behind. I was like, wow, somebody is feeding this dude black manosphere talking points.
Oh yeah, what it seems like to me is that the longer that, how can I say it, the brothers from the first gender war was able to broadcast, and then the Black Manosphere was able to broadcast, and the more widespread the word got out, it's like we prepared the segment of brothers for this, so which would allow those in quote unquote the standard media, if you will, to go ahead and basically steal or parrot what we've been saying, because we prepped the field for them. See?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I was trying to tell people is that they really underestimate the kind of system that America is compared to any other system in history. You know, too often it's overlooked that America, the way it was created as a republic, was based on everything that the framers of the U.S. Constitution had ever heard of prior to, of any civilization that existed. You know, they looked at all the civilizations, political and economic, ordering, and they tried to create a system that had all the strongest aspects of all those systems. And then at that time, you have to remember that society was experiencing a revolution in terms of it was going into an industrial age, but it was still in its baby stages. And we are the post-industrial age. So America's institutions were created in a way that it can absorb its counterculture. Now, when I say that, people they don't get what I really mean. See, what makes America so unique is when you look at it politically and economically, it can absorb its revolutionaries and turn them into the status quo in the next manifestation. No system in history has been able to do that.
Nah, you're absolutely right on that.
An overthrow. And the reason I say this to you is because I've had many conversations like with my uncles, my grandfathers and things like that. And I used to always ask them, like, what happened to black people, man? I used to always ask them this when I was younger. I'd be like, what happened to black people? How did they go from the civil rights to what we were before my grandfather, he rest in peace when he passed in 2002. And, my uncles and things like that. And they would tell me that this is what they said. All of the black leaders of the civil rights movement got jobs. You don't really hear that in the sector. People talk about it from that standpoint. Because what he was trying to say is that those people that were revolutionaries in the 60s, they ended up becoming a part of the stat. They got absorbed into the middle class, into the upper class, and that the system absorbed them. So it took, they talk about the head and the body and the heart, right? In terms of alignment of the society, and the head being the 10%, the body being like the next 10, 15%, and then like the sword and shield being represented by the military, and then you have everyone else, which feeds the stomach. So it's like the symbol is like a human body with the stomach, the mind, and the sword or whatever. And the majority of the population is there to feed the stomach of everybody, but it's directed by the head, which is your administrative class, your professorial class, your inventive class of people. That's always going to be small, less than 10% of the population, historically at least. You know what I'm saying? So those people that appear to be counterculture today, and we kind of see this in real time with how when we were children, we grew up listening to people like Jay-Z, but now here you are 10, 15 years later, and we're in our adulthood and we're coming of age, and now Jay-Z is making that transition from being this counterculture rapper, gangster rapper, to being absorbed into the bourgeoisie.
Absolutely. And it's something you mentioned because Stephen A. Smith's going to be talking about Jay-Z a little bit in this snippet that I'm going to be playing in the background. But it's something you mentioned because I've asked myself the same question too growing up, that like one of my grandfathers was a bishop in his church. And supposedly, well, he died roughly 4 years before I was born, but supposedly his church would be jam-packed and everything. And so once I was born and going through all the years and everything, the numbers started to dwindle and dwindle and dwindle to the point now where, the church is barely, last time I checked, is barely like maybe 10 members that's in there and whatnot. And so kind of was just thinking to myself, like, okay, what happened? Why did, the church that had all these members just suddenly, go to the wayside? And the key factor that I learned, that the productive brothers, the ones who actually kept the church going, they had lives outside of church.
Right.
And when you have that cycle to where, the productive guys got more things going on outside of church and everything, all of a sudden it's now just the women. And unless the women, so to speak, kind of keep things going and whatnot, it just goes to the wayside.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when it comes to the women being the basis of the Black quote unquote church, they're even starting now to leave. I've been hearing a lot in the news about like a lot of Black women are leaving the church now. That sounds shocking to most people, but they're starting to leave because what's happened, like I said about Jay-Z, that generation is getting older now. So that hip hop generation, that Generation X, which we're really talking about, they're aging and they're becoming, your the youngest Gen Xer is, I believe, like 41. That's the youngest Gen Xer. And the oldest one is like about to be 60 in a year, right? So that group is in a transitional phase in that last quarter or so of their life, like the Jay-Z's who's like 50. Some say he's like 55 and that he lied that his age is 50, but he's really like 55. So Jay-Z is somewhere between 50 and 55. And he's trying to make that transition into becoming like a Byron Allen type person. He wants to be some kind of mixture of a Byron Allen meets Al Sharpton. I've been peeping his game, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't that long ago that he was talking about gangster rap, selling cocaine and all, killing people and all that. So that's the male side of it, right? The female side is that these women, it was always that thought to good girl, getting married, becoming a soccer mom. That was kind of the game that the Gen X women thought they were going to be able to run. But there was interference ran because enough of those Gen X dudes woke up and they was like, nah, we're not wifing up these thoughts like that. And then the cleanup man stepdad was killed in the last wave of the Gen Xers too, by the guys like Jay-Z and people like that. So when you talk to a lot of the younger Gen Xers that are between like 41 to 50, they're like the most, rebellious out of all the living generations that I encounter in these kind of conversations, especially when you talk about the relationship between Black men and Black women. Those dudes have a lot of animosity because unlike the millennial and zennials who have left that plantation and that race loyalty thing that comes with no benefits and a whole bunch of sacrifice and cost, they got caught in the middle. You see what I'm saying? The Gen X.
Yeah, because that's what you're describing is my part of I'm a Gen Xer, and that's what you're describing. We had 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Yep.
First foot we had in was seeing the Black the Black community. I would say it was more so the community back then. You had more intact families. You didn't have all these crazy ass names. The men were in the homes. You had more order and more cohesion when I was a kid. Okay, and then the other foot landed to the after effects of the civil rights, no fault divorce, Title IX, all this other shit, the welfare, you know, uh, all the effects of that. Uh, we 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 seen the effects of that, and so it was like compare and contrast. But going to your point, when you're saying Jay Z, I would say that me being a Gen Xer, uh, that it could be that Jay Z was just replicating what he had seen. And as I said before, the leaders of the civil rights movement, or who was in that leadership, I'm speaking particularly in regards to the men, okay? They were the ones, remember, there was not the internet back then, there was not social media.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't have the speed of communication. That's the speed of being in tune with what was going on across the state, across the country. You see, and so the only ones who would have that in Black America would have been those in leadership, like the Jesse Jacksons, the Andrew Youngs, the Martin Luther Kings, all those guys. Okay, and so if anyone could have seen what was going on nationwide in terms of Black America and had the network, it would have been them. You see.
Yep, and I'm glad that you make that point, because I'm always trying to impart to people that we underestimate how revolutionary the internet and artificial intelligence and all this cyber tech really is. I try to explain to people, like, your ability to reach across the planet with this technology is just unbelievable. And I try to give the example to people when they ask me, when I tell them that I didn't find SYSBM. I was already a person that was always rebellious in terms of falling in line with those that pro-black stuff. I never embraced it like that in the way that the Black Woman First guys did. And so I was explaining it to someone that my grandfather didn't have the freedom options that I had. Like he fought in the war, but he only went overseas to fight in the war. And as soon as it was over, he came back home. And being from Mississippi and going through Jim Crow and going through the Great Migration and all that. But I have to ask myself, if my grandfather was in his 20s or 30s today, would he have been with my grandmother? I don't think he would have. Not knowing what we know now, like you just said, Frank, what we know. See, the internet has given us a fly on the wall look into both genders' mentality, and it's kind of scary. Especially for us looking into the Black female. It's so much that we did it out of know about women in general in America and about the Black American, because we saw what we saw on TV, and they always kind of, it was always a political correct version, and you may have saw it a little in your life, but at no point did you just always hear women telling you what they felt openly.
Right.
And now internet, they do that on the internet.
And not only that, but to where now with technology where you can have people who are like-minded conversate in one location and they all share the same type of circumstances that they've been through.
Yep.
Like before technology, even on your run-of-the-mill, going out through the streets and whatnot, it'd be rare that you find somebody that experienced the same type of observations that you have. But now with technology, it's like, King Sigma, you're in the Midwest and I'm over here on the West Coast, but what we're observing is all the same thing from our observations, and we all can do that under one location. Before technology, you couldn't even do that.
And that's just us talking. I mean, what about World Star Hip Hop? Social media. When you add in social media to what you just said, that's what the most socially has changed things, because we were just talking today on my channel about the whole thing with the states passing the free to nipple law, right?
Yeah, I saw that. I even read up on it too.
That changes the relationship between men and women on a sexual level. One, the law is for 10-year-old girls and up. Do you guys get what I'm trying to say? Okay.
What? Say that again. What law is that again?
The free to nipple law.
What's
Sigma,
that?
talk about it, and I'll post the link because I was reading it earlier.
So Brother Jones will look it up, but basically, a few states, Denver, Colorado being at the head, passed a law that allows females from the age of 10 and up to walk around topless now, legally. And this was a law. This was a law passed by the feminists themselves. Now, people are calling men pedophiles. What do you do now? You're in the mall or somewhere outside, and it's like 13-year-old girls running around. They just got their brand new titties, and they're walking around topless now. Like we're back in fucking 1,000 years ago, living in a village or something. So they're turning modern society. Everything's going backwards, and that's the intention of communists. Communists want to take us back to like a traditional, like they have this utopian fantasy of somehow taking us back to like this era where we ran around hunting and gathering as a community where there were no distinctions and there was no private life. They want to destroy private life. Communism is about destroy the private individual private life. So just like that, with the snap of the fingers, the feminists got this law passed, and since it's already passed in 5 states, if things continue on the current trajectory, which I don't think it will, but let's just theoretically, let's say that you get a female feminist president next year, which I do not believe this was going to happen, but can you imagine that law will become a federal law? All the states would have that law. So 2-3 years from now, I'm just trying to picture in my mind. So I'd rather go to the strip club. They do all that. You won't even have to go to a strip club anymore because on a Sunday afternoon, you could just go sit down by the lake and watch women jogging around, titties out everywhere. It's just a whole new paradigm, man. New paradigm.
I figured the first thing to go after the passage of that law in Colorado will be that the strippers no longer have to wear pasties.
I don't even think there will be any strip clubs because remember, the next thing to come is going to be legal prostitution.
Yes. So, and that's my point. Give them what they want.
Yeah.
All this is a variation of whoredom. Let them have legalized whoredom. But here's the thing. As I said before in my video yesterday, females are the gatekeepers to sex. This is about they want to control my body by choice. Fine, let them have that. But men are the gatekeepers to relationships, which lead to validation. They can't have that without men. Okay, so what we have the final say. Just don't choose them. Let them be whores. Use them as whores, but don't choose them. They'll be old whores.
So
old, homeless, lonely, desperate, DNA seeking whores.
So the links are posted both in the public chat and the private chat. But yeah, after reading what King Sigma was showing earlier today, it was like, the next major thing, and they already been talking about it, but now with this new legalization, the next thing to be legalized will be prostitution. And I, for one, believe, especially in regards to America, once that is legalized, you're going to see a paradigm shift in the interactions between men and women.
Oh, yeah.
It's not the one that the communists expected, though. Because, see, remember, the communists, like Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, they're the ones that's behind all of this. But one of the things that they're kind of not being able to control is the reaction from the men. They thought it was going to be like a completely controlled demolition. Like it was going to be a controlled social demolition that they thought that, over the last 200 years, they figured that it was like 50-year plan, 50-year plan, 50-year plan, 50-year plan. But the one, variable that they didn't really plan for like they thought they could was how men would react to each, progression. And the red pill, quote unquote, is a backlash, and a very strong backlash that's growing now that they didn't expect. And they also didn't expect, they thought females would be able to handle it. The what you were talking about earlier about the lack of validation, men withdrawing. For example, you just had over the last 30 days, 2 feminist-oriented movies completely flopped and cost Hollywood, so much money. Dark Fate, Terminator, right?
Mm-hmm.
They planned all this ahead of time. They thought they were just gonna like, okay, we're gonna win this election in 2020. So to get this election, from the moment Trump won, they had a 2-year plan. We're gonna pump out mega propaganda on this feminism, futurist female supremacy stuff, right? That's all they've been doing since 2016. But they're not getting the reaction from the population they expected. That's why the Joker movie, it has them scratching their head so hard. You see what I'm saying? Because that movie was not supposed to be successful in this era of female supremacy propaganda. And all of their movies were supposed to be the ones making $1 billion, but instead they're flopping left and right. You just had Charlie's Angel, a movie written by a radical feminist, starring all females, complete flop. Same thing with Terminator. And this is back to back. I mean, a complete flops. And the Charlie's Angels, these are both stellar franchises, okay? These are the kind of like template franchises that you're supposed to be able to just put in a star actor and just pump out a movie, and it's supposed to at a minimum break even, right? But they're getting a response from the public that is not what they expected, and that's why they want to get rid of men like the ones on this panel. That's why they want to get rid of the men like the ones that are in the chat and the ones that are viewing, because we are not supposed to be thinking and having conversations that reject the propaganda.
Right, you're right. Supreme King Coon is in the building. What's going on, good sir?
What's going on, Sigma Jones? Let's be frank, King Sigma.
Hey, what's up with you, bro?
Oh man, I fell into a bunch of my old readings back in college. Basically, some of the Civilization series by Will Durant, who is a historian. During the early, he started like a historical series in the early 30s, and it ended around the late 70s. And so I started rereading a lot of it concerning Greece and Rome. And man, I'm sharing some stuff with Mr. Fantastic come Wednesday. But like I had emailed you earlier, King Sigma, about that whole idea about the legalization of prostitution.
Mm-hmm.
After these readings and other readings that I've come across, I'm against.
You're against legal prostitution?
Yeah.
Now, why is that?
There are too many social cues throughout history that show that there's too much risk in it. And usually when a society gets to that point of accepting those things, a huge slippery slope of decline happens right afterwards. Every major world power.
I disagree, and I'm gonna tell you why. See, you say that it's a cause and effect. I think that legal prostitution is an effect of the cause, in the sense that the slippery slope is already in his last. Now, Paul Bryan was making a comment in the chat about the Platonic cycle that I'm very aware of, and I actually believe that we're in the death phase of Western society to a point where the best that you can do is like, if you've ever been in a car where the brakes are really worn down, America is so far gone within its social institutions and the culture and the psychology that at best you can just put the brakes on it. But every society that's ever existed goes through the Platonic cycle or the seasons of a civilization. And we're in the winter phase, and it will be replaced by something new and foreign. So when you say that the prostitution it will begin like some, no. Legal prostitution and what we call feminism is all a part of the death phase of a civilization. This is nothing new, bro. It's happened many times.
Right. And Black America was the canary in the coal mine. You see, yeah. we're ahead of all this stuff. I mean, legal prostitution, illegal prostitution, doesn't matter. Black America has already had some form of prostitution. Okay, a lot of chicks was turned out in the time when crack came. Okay, tons of women. Okay, so we've had, and they're whoring themselves out now. I mean, as they say, the price of pussy have sucked to all-time low. Okay, so now it's time for the other communities whose women are out of pocket to also feel the effects. You see, that's all that you can't stop it. It is what it is.
You know,
Go ahead.
you know, something else I wanted to add to what you're saying, that I was thinking about. I've been thinking about, okay, so these women claim that they want to control society because society would be better if women ran everything, right? They say this, right?
That's what they say.
Now, I'm asking myself, so we can all admit that at least over the last decade, women have really taken over in a lot of arenas, as Google pointed out that Google was paying their females more than their men.
Yep.
What have women in this matriarchal collection created in, let's just say, the last 10 years of note versus what they've actually destroyed? Can you guys give me something, example of what they have actually created that didn't already exist in society besides them doing revolutionary changes in sexuality in America? Because the only thing that I could see that these feminists have done as far as didn't already exist is creating this environment that everything is sexualized. That's all I see.
Yeah, I can't think of anything major, far as anything that society cannot live without that women have created. Nothing comes to mind.
Right. And I'm just thinking, one of the sayings that they always had was that rule by women or women being in control would be more peaceful, that women wouldn't fight wars. Well, looking back at history, they don't win wars either. Okay?
It's something you mentioned too with that because I think it was what 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where Congress just recently made it now, where select the service. So if there's a draft ever happens, women are now able to be selected in a draft.
That's right. Put their asses up on there.
Big as this, how effective would that be?
I've never heard one woman that I asked that question about the female draft say that they're all for it. I've told women that, and not one of them said to me, "Oh, I look forward to getting," not one that I've met.
Nah, same here.
They want all the benefits and none of the sacrifices and cost.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, let's go back to the Charlie Angels movie. The movie flops this weekend, and what is the first thing that the female director does?
Blames men.
Yep. This is insanity, man. The first thing out of her mouth this morning when being interviewed is that it's men's fault that my female-directed movie flopped.
Of course they're going to say that because there's no other rationale that they can come up with, even though they are in the majority so far as population in this country.
Yeah.
And also remember,
it just really shows not even women want to support their own things.
Right. They are the majority. They're supposed to be more educated, and they're supposed to be the ones saying that there aren't any men on their level, any marriageable men. So if it failed, it's because females didn't come out to support the rhetoric.
Correct. Right. And you see that in a lot of things that are kind of female-centered. A lot of their viewpoints and, of course, the arts and music and so forth. But, I mean, when I just look at society as a whole, to me, and again, just going back to what you were talking about earlier, King Sigma, with the whole prostitution thing, I think that any society needs to have balance. Mm-hmm. And when the pendulum swings too far in either direction, whether it's male or female, there are going to be harsh consequences for both parties.
Oh, yeah.
And I really think that just like how a lot of feminists at one point, they were pushing for various rights. And then when they finally got them and they got all of the things that come along with it, they had to taste the bitter pills of things that were associated with that as well. And I think men that are push for it, like the whole idea of prostitution being legalized, mm-hmm. I don't think they understand the bitter pills or the bitter results that are going to come from that.
See, it's actually not men. It's not men though. Let's go back. Let's go back to what Sigma Jones just posted. Right, he just posted how 6 states just now made it legal free to nipple. These were laws that were fought by the feminists. Let's read a Colorado city's decision to discontinue a legal battle to bar women from appearing topless in public has effectively legalized the risque fashion statement in 6 Western states. And it says that these were brought by female plaintiffs.
Correct.
The cities and the states were the defendants, and a group of females said that boobs, they're claiming that tits are not a part of sexuality. That's what they claim. So they said that we want to be able to wear no bras and we want to be able to go topless in public. And now they can go topless in public in already 6 states of Colorado, Kansas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Utah, and Wyoming. And we already know that it'll be nationwide within a year or two. So in prostitution, okay, let's look at the back page thing. Let's look at the Pornhub being demonetized by PayPal. Let's look at by PayPal. Let's just look at those 2 scenarios, right? Okay. Who is it that's doing all the promotion of sex workers and decriminalizing sex work? Women.
Correct.
Through feminist leadership like Kamala Harris. Who is the ones that are pushing for porn and all of this type of stuff and lowering the age of consent? That's what the women are doing.
Right.
I was also saying,
I wasn't saying that like the whole thing with prostitution was something that is being I would say propagated by men. I was in a discussion earlier with some men, and they were supporting it, and I was saying, man, I don't really think y'all understand the push behind it, its origins, or some of the results that will come from it. You're saying this with the idea of you're thinking with, short-term sexuality. But if you look at the long-term consequences and other consequences that can come out of that, I don't think that you're going to like that very much.
Now, who do you mean you?
I would say. So far as the guys I was talking to earlier.
Oh, so you were saying that they were all pro prostitution?
Right. And I'm just saying that in the short term, they may find some pleasure in that.
No, I think they will.
I don't think that they understand the ramifications of how that will affect society.
I think they do understand. I'm gonna tell you why. See, you gotta understand, Kuhn, we're already 12 years into this red pill thing, right? The men that you're referring to have already become adjusted. We're forgetting how alienated your everyday man is from women today now. We're in a society that's been under the 80-20 rule for about 10 or 12 years now. Do you realize that we have more virgins at the age of 30 than any generation that ever lived? See, you're not understanding that these men we're almost 5 years away from becoming the next herbivore society. Japan has already showed us what's going to happen. America's only like 5-7 years away from becoming its own. Guarantee you this, 5 years from now, if things continue on the trajectory they're on, you will start hearing the feminists calling American men herbivore men instead of MGTOWs, because the natural step from MGTOW is going to become the herbivore men. So you may say, well, these men do know the ramifications, because 8 out of 10 men ain't getting no pussy yet anyways. They're not getting multiple dates on a regular basis. A very small group of men now. And I had this conversation with a couple of females recently. And I said the truth. She was complaining about some dude. And I was like, y'all all fuck the same dudes anyway. She didn't have no response, because ain't no man ever told her this kind of things. I'm like, look at shorty, you and your girls out here complaining about this dude, that dude. All of y'all is recycling the same handful of dudes. And then this was a girl who caught me up in some shit one time, where she showed up to my place unannounced, and I had another female there, and you would have thought, well, she would have stopped talking to me. Well, that shit happened 3 years ago. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't make sense. I get where you're coming from a logical standpoint, but that's your male brain talking. These women like a situation where they're fucking 20% of the dudes and they're using the other 80% for whatever economic gain. So the dudes you're referring to that are in that 80%, They already are adjusted to the situation. They want prostitution because at least that way they can guarantee them pussy. Okay, the 20%, nothing changes for them. If you're in the 20% and you're a dude that already got you a rotation, ain't nothing gonna change for you. Nothing changes. The group impacted by legalized prostitution are the 80% of men that ain't getting laid on a regular
Right.
day.
The 20% still want to get it for free.
Yeah.
And I would make the argument too that in a way we're already seeing a small subset of the herbivore phenomenon because, and I was talking this with my brother on yesterday, you're seeing a lot of younger men where all they really do is just play video games and they'll just go to work, make the money, and then just go home and play video games.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have no interest in traveling. They have no interest in, as far as working out and everything. Maybe once in a while they may go out for a bit, but other than that, they'd rather just be cooped up in their house or apartment, whatever, and just be on Madden or play PS4. Like they literally have no interest in socializing outside of their home or very little in the workforce.
Right. And so those guys and the other guys of this male revolution are saying, so what? I mean, what else? What else can be worse? Because just using your example, Supreme, think about feminism in the late 60s, early 70s. Okay, what's the ramifications of that? 14 to 24 million black aborted fetuses, hundreds of thousands of black men falsely put on child support, hundreds of thousands of men put in prison for a back due non-payment of child support. Okay, men being having their children taken away from them. Okay, what else can be wrong? What else can be the ramifications outside of that?
Oh man.
I think me and Kuhn.
Go ahead, King Sigma.
I'm just saying I just agree with Let's Be Frank. I feel like you're more optimistic probably than he or I is. And I've said it before, I'm somewhere between red pill and black pill now at this point in my life. I really am. I think that the natural, as you gain more and more knowledge of really what this whole quote unquote feminism thing is about, because like I said, it's just a facade for communism. If you study Engels and Marx, it's just a method for getting to the point of destroying the traditional family, which is what they believe that the whole Catholic they believe that the cornerstone, and they're correct on this, of the capitalist system and the system that we have here in America is based on the patriarchal family, because they believe that the family's alignment and the structure of the household is a microcosm of the greater society. So the communist goal is to make everything public and have no private property, no family. The shit is really treacherous, man. It really is when you really start peeling the layers behind. Once you accept that feminism is just a tool of communism, man, the shit is hella treacherous, man.
Now, I totally agree with that, with those readings, King Sigma, and the whole thought that family will be targeted and is targeted for destruction. And that's why I stated partially to the whole idea of whole prostitution thing. I'm sorry, but however people want to say, hey, okay, those 80% of dudes that they're gonna love it. Okay, I understand that. They probably will. And that'll be a great thing for them. But again, the entire system of how you govern and how you interact as a society changes completely, and family becomes irrelevant.
Yeah, I could see it from that point too. But let me go ahead and transition a little bit towards tonight's topic. Like I was telling earlier with Let's Be Frank and King Sigma, I was listening in today on Stephen A. Smith's show, and he was kind of giving his input on the whole Colin Kaepernick situation. And a lot of what he talks about, we talk about it, here within the Black Manosphere. And, King Sigma, he pointed out earlier how, the guys in the mainstream, they be listening to us. And when you hear Stephen A. Smith's talking points, you're going to definitely see automatically that he's been listening in on somebody within the Black Manosphere. But definitely I wanted to play some of the snippets so that way you guys can kind of see the whole talking point that's going on. So
sure, man. That'd be interesting.
I'm going to go ahead and get this rolling in the background. Okay.
But you're going to have to forgive me on this particular day.
I'm going to fast forward.
Ultimately, the NFL owners were taken aback, particularly once the president of the United States got involved, brought attention to what he termed to be Colin Kaepernick's lack of patriotism, completely hijacking the issue, politicizing what Colin Kaepernick did in such a fashion and with such effectiveness that it forced the NFL owners to engage in panic. And as a result, Colin Kaepernick hasn't been in the league. And ever since that time, he's been looking to get back in the league, filing a grievance against the league, reaching a settlement with the league for an undisclosed amount with undisclosed specifications and stipulations that came along with that grievance. And then we fast forward to what transpired this past weekend. And here we are. Colin Kaepernick refuses to show up. Colin Kaepernick had a problem with the liability waiver that the league wanted him to sign. The league says one thing existed in a liability waiver where they simply gave him a standard liability waiver that it's given out at the NFL scouting combine, NFL invitational camps, things of that nature, that's accorded to all unrestricted free agents, where a team that's working them out or a bevy of teams that are looking at them are under no obligation to sign them, and you can't sue them. Also, some injury were to take place. You can't sue them for workers' compensation, those kind of things. These are the kind of things the NFL are saying were in the liability waiver. Colin Kaepernick.
Drill.
Cordless.
Noted.
That's a good one.
Introducing.
In his camp have a different interpretation of
My
that.
bad for that. The ads.
Apparently,
Yeah,
there was something in the waiver in the fine language, according to them, via the mouths of Max Kellerman and others, where they were simply saying, the NFL were insisting that under no circumstances, not just during the workout, but in the future, would I have a right to sue them, et cetera, et cetera. NFL denies that. Two sides to every story. It is what it is. You know, I want to preface what I'm about to get into.
About to fast forward a little bit of it.
Jonathan Winthrop, my producer, should be towards Colin Kaepernick, his best friend and resident security, Eric Reed. List goes on and on. I have an obligation to be considerate of the platform that I am on and the company that I work for. So I want to make sure that the public out there knows emphatically. I want to throw Chuck Solituro into the mix as well. Chuck Solituro is an editor for First Take, is an editor at ESPN, and dare I say, one of the most highly professional, competent individuals that I've ever come across in my professional career. A good man, and somebody that looks out for this network at every turn. And I'm honored to be working alongside him on a daily basis. But I want to make sure I throw names out because I want to make sure that everybody understands that the comments that are about to be spewed out of my mouth are of no obligation to them. They don't know what I'm going to say on these airwaves over the next 2 hours. They have no clue because I didn't talk to them about it. And I ain't going to talk to them about it. These are my own comments. And here I go. In my humble opinion, Colin Kaepernick's NFL career is over. And if the National Football League were to elect to never call Colin Kaepernick again, I want to emphasize, I don't give a damn. And care less. Now, there's a whole bunch of black people out there that are up in arms right now. I've already been called the sellout, coon, names like that.
Told you he listens, man.
My response is, that's all y'all got? Y'all really think that's going to stop me from saying what the hell I want to say? Let me be very, very clear. What I just said about Colin Kaepernick applies to anybody who is a potential employee, aspiring to be an employee, devoid of an ownership stake in a particular entity, but thinks you can act the way that Colin Kaepernick acted Saturday and get a job. I want Colin Kaepernick to be in the NFL. I believe that Colin Kaepernick has been blackballed. I believe that not only was Colin Kaepernick blackballed, but it's egregious and unfair.
Okay, I'm going to pause that real quick. Essentially, like, as soon as he said that he'd been called a coon, a sellout, and everything, it's kind of like, Stephen A., welcome to the Black Manosphere. Like, we've been called this for over decades now. And the thing that he's touching on right now is the fact that, you know, he personally believes that, yes, the NFL has blackballed Colin Kaepernick, so to speak, because he's been kneeling and whatnot, even though based on what King Sigma you brought up on Saturday, and even I had to kind of read this up myself, apparently he wasn't even tried to kneel as far as in protest of the national anthem on police brutality. The dude was pretty much having an argument with one of the coaches. And so during the national anthem, which in the NFL at the time, you don't have to stand, you don't have to, face the flags or anything. You can just take a knee or pretty much, do whatever you want. And then a reporter comes by as he's taking a knee and asks him, hey, are you kneeling because of the police brutality that's going on in America? And supposedly that's how it just took off from there. Now, my thing is this. Yes, one could kind of make the argument that he was somewhat blackballed since he was the face of the whole kneeling stuff. But as soon as he signed off on that collusion settlement, he lost all rights of trying to get back into the NFL.
And taking the Nike contract.
That too.
Because for me, it's like, okay, once you took that settlement, what are you doing, bro? Like, I don't get it. Like, I don't get what he's trying to accomplish at this point with this PR stunt. I mean, you heard it from Jay-Z's mouth. Now, I don't 100% agree with Stephen A. Smith, but it's interesting that Jay-Z said that he's disappointed in Colin Kaepernick because he was the one that set this whole thing up. And I got some questions for Jay-Z too. But me just looking at it as a layman person on the outside looking in, the optics is horrible, man. Like, okay, you've been out of the league for 3 years. You're a 32-year-old quarterback. We don't know if you can still play at the NFL level. We can look at you in practice, but it's a whole different thing when you get back on that field. You get the NFL, you do the settlement, you sign the Nike contract. We hadn't heard you actually speak in 3 years. So almost 99% of all of this martyrdom that he's earned is based on other people talking for him. The media, liberal outlets, a bunch of black people on social media. But when have you actually heard him sit down and do like an hour-long interview with any major person?
Oh, he has part of that little snippet too, where he talks to somewhat the media after this whole fiasco. But outside of that, yeah, I've yet to see him like actually go to public sectors and speak on supposedly the issues that he stands against.
How does he articulate himself? No.
Nope.
You heard him out there after the practice thing. This dude was saying things like, I love all y'all. Tell the owners to stop being scared. I mean, I'm like, bruh, if it wasn't for the media and it wasn't for all these armchair pundits, this whole thing would have been done a long time ago because he can't articulate what his actual mission really is.
Hey man, somebody told him, shh, just ride the wave, man. Ride this wave.
It's not a bad idea to ride the wave the way that Kim Kardashian is. I haven't heard Kim Kardashian say more than like 2 or 3 sentences at one time. But she rides the fame wave because fame has a gravitas of its own.
Ride the wave, man. Let these Negroes think whatever they want to think.
Exactly. And that's exactly what's going on with Kaepernick. So when I hear what Stephen A. Smith said, I do agree with Stephen A. Smith. Like, the dude doesn't really want to play football, man. He doesn't really want to play football. I mean, let's be honest, man.
Well, it gets interesting. Let me continue on with it.
What has happened to him over the last 3 years? He violated no laws. He violated no NFL bylaws. Unlike the National Basketball Association, unlike Major League Baseball, at the time that Colin Kaepernick elected to kneel, the NFL did not mandate that you stand for the national anthem. We know this because Marshawn Lynch was seen sitting down on a cooler eating a banana while the national anthem was being played. Nobody said anything. And he still played, and he wasn't fined, nor suspended, or anything like that. It was perfectly within Colin Kaepernick's right to do what he did. The fact that he has been exiled from the NFL since that particular time, it's egregious, it's inexcusable. Hell, it reeks of racism. There you got it, I said it. What does that have to do with what happened Saturday? So, for those of you who care about the facts, here they are. On Tuesday, last Tuesday, the NFL notified Colin Kaepernick's folks that they have organized and agreed to
these commercials. Okay, waiting for these commercials to be done, then I can play the next part. Okay.
Out specifically for him. The NFL in its history has never done that. They agree to have a workout for Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick is informed that the workout will take place at 3 p.m. on Saturday in Flowery Branch at the Atlanta Falcons practice facilities. It would be videotaped and filmed. Security would be provided. Equipment would be provided. Wide receivers would be provided. Anything that was available for a particular workout, he could have. It would take place at 3 o'clock on Saturday. Wednesday goes by, nothing. Thursday goes by, nothing. Friday goes by. Colin Kaepernick's lawyers are presented with a liability waiver. They inform the NFL that, okay, we'll take a look at it. We've got some suggestions. Not a big deal. We'll get back to you. And Saturday at 2:30, 30 minutes before the workout was scheduled, Colin Kaepernick's folks informed the National Football League that Colin Kaepernick will not attend the workout. Instead, he will have his own workout 51 minutes away. Rather than put stuff into my words, matter of fact, I'm not going to play the Colin Kaepernick sound just yet. Hold on. Colin Kaepernick has the workout 51 minutes away, moves the workout back from 3 to 4 p.m., invites the team to come work out, the teams to come and watch him. So what happens? Why does this happen? Issue with the liability waiver supposedly was one thing. The other thing was that he wanted the right to videotape the workout himself. The NFL said no. Why did the NFL say no? The NFL said no because the NFL was saying, we don't do that. What we will do, however, is we will film the workout. We will give you the raw footage. And on top of it all, the edited taped version of the workout that we're sending out to all 32 teams, we'll give you that as well. We will let your representatives be on the field with you. We will let Hugh Jackson inform your representatives, your trainers, whomever, exactly what drills we're going to put you through. We will go to your agents and let them know what questions we're going to ask you so you can be prepared to answer them. All of these things were stipulated too, not to mention that Colin Kaepernick was showing up with Nike to film a commercial, and the NFL okayed that. This is according to the NFL. There are people who will sit up there and say, but Stephen A., what the hell is wrong with you? I mean, my God, he can't trust them. He cannot trust them, Stephen A. What is he supposed to do?
Okay, so we're now getting into the nigga logic. Well, how is he supposed to trust the NFL? Well, then why did you accept the collusion money?
Sounds like a bunch of emotionalism again. But hey, Sigma Jones, man, I gotta run, man. I appreciate you inviting me, man. I'll listen to it on the replay, man. Okay.
Yeah. Hey, Frank, thanks for having me, and definitely I'll catch you on the Friday Night Live.
Peace, brothers.
Peace.
All right, man. Have a good night.
So now people are now saying like, well, the NFL is doing all this for you. They even allowing you to have your own players at this workout. So keep in mind, this is the first time the NFL has ever held a private workout for one player. One player. And they're even giving you some stipulation where, hey, you can have your own wide receivers, so to speak, because you're being paid by Nike. You can have Nike come onto the set to do your whatever type of video or such you're doing, production. Pretty much a whole lot of stipulations. State of the art from the Atlanta Falcons facility. And you was notified of this at least by Tuesday of last week. All the way up until that Saturday, you said nothing. But then come that Saturday, 40, 50 minutes before you're supposed to show up to do the workout, you send a last-minute message to the 25 reps saying, hey, I'm going to be doing this workout at another facility. That is definitely some Negro logic. You guys' thoughts?
Maybe he can't play anymore. Maybe his skill has diminished greatly, and he's just too embarrassed to acknowledge that.
It's plain and obvious this man is just gaining attention. I mean, the NFL is giving you all this stipulation. No other player has gotten this much stipulation just to get a private workout.
Kaepernick is a reality TV star, bro.
Yeah.
I had to sit back and really think about it. And then I noticed that he's using the Kim Kardashian formula, and it's been very successful for him. Like I said, like Kim Kardashian and never speaks, he is a guy that has all this media attention, but he ain't spoken outside of maybe the first week after it happened. I haven't heard this dude speak in 3 years, and we still talking about him. Why is this dude still relevant, man?
Because black people make him relevant.
Right there.
He ain't doing. What is he? What? Okay.
He doesn't have to do anything.
Kick Sigma. Here's the thing.
He's riding the wave of black fragility of white supremacy.
And to go off to kind of add more to what Supreme King Kun just says, as long as you defend Black pathology, you will always remain relevant in the eyes of Black America, no matter how beyond your time you are.
And that's why that's why the majority of this group is finished, because Kaepernick is as corporate of a spokesperson as O.J. Simpson was running through the airport. He ain't no different, bro. It's just like what has happened is that the quote unquote woke corporations have found a way to monetize counterculture, like I was just talking to you about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes America unique. They can find ways to absorb and monetize their counterculture. Gen Xers know that. I've done the research on like how the rap game was perceived when it first came out with people like Public Enemy, KRS-One, versus what it became in the early 2000s to today. It went from a counterculture to actually being a preferred way of marketing to the young people in today's day and age. So what I'm saying is that he is just as much a corporate spokesman as anyone in the NFL. He's playing the rebel without a cause, and he's collecting checks while all these cheerleaders on the sideline broke and hungry. Colin Kaepernick just cashed in on his collusion settlement check. Then he also got a check from Nike, and he's built up like a reality star following, because remember, those dudes get checks on social media based on when they post as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you got like a following over 1 million and you just post, man, you should look at what some of these superstars get per posting on social media. Man, they get a lot of fucking bread. Like Beyonce, if she just post something that said, I did my hair, and like, let's say she acts like this company that's popular with the thoughts called Fashion Nova. Do you know that broad gets like a $300,000 check for one fucking Instagram post?
Yeah. That's why they're getting upset with this whole Instagram removing likes and everything, because for them, that's their bread and butter.
Yeah.
That's how they, as they say, put bread on the table.
Yeah. I mean, it's really it's really a sick thing, but at the same time, I mean, for so far it's like a business strategy.
Oh,
I mean,
yes, exactly.
Kaepernick is doing what he's supposed to do. I mean,
exactly.
You think about it. Hey, which one is better for me to shut up, make money, ride this wave of this, black victimization, or go into these facilities, have to work all through the year on and getting hit by 300-pound men,
exactly,
running at the top of their speed, and having the weight of a NFL franchise on my shoulders, sit and do nothing.
Of course, exactly. It's basically an unemployment check for him at this point.
Yeah.
He got
and then I'm gonna go down in infamy in the annals of blackness of B1 blackness.
Wakanda.
Where people can say, "Oh man, you remember Kaepernick and what the injustice that was done to him? His career was cut short." It's like, come on, man.
All of that shit. You know what it is, bro? I was just telling Paul Bryan in the chat, right? And we were having a friendly discussion about the Platonic cycle and the comparison of the Platonic Republic to the pure communist state of Marx. And for me, they're both communists. If you really, really think about the core of communism is the destruction of the family. For me, not for Paul Bryan, but that's my whole thought. But one of the things when you come into the winter phase of a civilization is that bread and circuses becomes more and more pronounced from the ruling class as they try to cover more and more of the pile of shit that they've allowed to build up in society. And that's what we have in America. You have a country now that the last 2 years, the deficit passed the GDP in America, okay? Now there's more debt than there is actual yearly income, and that shit is growing. The same country that talked about free markets and this and that nationalized their banks in 2009 to 2011 and gave Wall Street criminals a $20 trillion check. Okay, I mean, that's what we're talking about here. Why do you think that the media and these celebrities get more and more of a platform by the day? When do we have all these celebrities speaking on things that doctors and lawyers and economists and sociologists used to speak on, okay? But in Black America, we're the only group that's told that the people that actually do this stuff for a living every day and that can break this shit down with white papers, they can actually teach you all the aspects of it. They are the ones that are supposed to get the big platforms. Every other society does that. Only when it comes to dealing with the Black American populations do they put this cult of celebrity above actual expertise when having these kind of conversations. No one has heard Colin Kaepernick speak on police brutality in depth since 2016. Prove me wrong. You haven't heard him speak. I haven't seen him. Where have you seen him, man? It's been a whole bunch of police killings. Did Colin Kaepernick come out and give a speech on TV in a debate about the Amber Geiger injustice trial? No. Did he have anything to say about that? Not that I'm aware of. I bet you the most thing he's done in 3 years is probably sending out a few tweets every year, getting a nice check for those tweets, and that's it. If a guy has the kind of platform that he has, why isn't he doing like forums where he's bringing in like these great thinkers on the topic and having a discussion? He ain't been trying to do none of that shit. He got the money. He ain't done none of that.
No, not at all.
He got $5 million in his settlement. Then he got the contract with Nike. We don't know exactly what the amount is. But my point is that if he was truly this revolutionary dude, he would be having some kind of platform where you would be hearing him speak about it with expertise. I haven't heard of. He took advantage of a situation that was an accident of history. And like the brother said, I agree that he got blackballed based on race. It's no question in my mind. And I have a lot of problems with these right wingers, right authoritarians talking about somebody can't kneel for the flag when that's actually our protected First Amendment right to kneel or burn the flag or piss on it if I so choose. You cannot force a civilian to have patriotism. Now, I agree with them on that. But all this hype about Colin Kaepernick outside of that, that was a mistake of history. Come on, man. This shows how far gone we are at this point in society. We're sitting up here talking about the fact that prostitution, the feminists are about to legalize that shit another year or two, man.
Man, I can't fault Kaepernick, because I mean, if I was in his ear, I'd be telling him the same thing. Shh, bro, quiet. Make this money. Relax.
Yeah.
Let these niggas believe whatever they want to believe.
In the words of Obsidian, keep hope alive.
But so I can't really knock him for that. What I will say is that I have to blame the culture, man, because it's black people that's keeping this at the forefront of the news. It's not white people. So I mean, it is what it is, man. This is the culture that unfortunately marks the breadth of it's our culture, man.
My culture is your culture.
I'm not ours, but it's black people's culture. And
man, it's not even black people's culture. It's the abandoned poor's culture. That's who's culture.
Well, right now it's the loudest, and it's stuck on victimization. It is what it is.
Yeah, they really are. They are stuck on the victimization, and that's how all these corporations are able to monetize their stupidity while keeping them in the same position they were in from the very beginning of the kneeling. Someone got it. How has the black condition on a criminal court system level improved from the standpoint of the leftists since he kneeled in 2016? If anything, it was the Republicans that passed the only criminal reform that's been passed in the last 30 years.
Yeah. Well, it shouldn't improve. It shouldn't improve. Actually, I don't think that any black person can really name anything that's post civil rights that has actually been productive for black culture or society.
That's a damn good statement. I'm telling you, man, I came to the same conclusion that you have. Like, and even the liberals themselves say it. The Washington Post said the same thing you're saying last year. They said since the Civil Rights Act, there has been no collective progress of black America in terms of home ownership, economic development, and all the economic statistics. The only thing that I would say that has changed really is that we probably have a higher number of millionaires, but it was not a gain in the sense that those millionaires came at the expense of the middle class. So the middle class shrunk, the abandoned poor got larger, and the top 5% got a little bit bigger. You know what I'm saying? But it was at the expense of the middle class.
Well, even at that, I'll say that those individuals that became millionaires or whatnot,
Yeah,
did so because for the majority of them, they pretty much abandoned the culture.
Yeah, they
I don't think
they
I don't think they abandoned the culture, because I know this is not the case, because I just finished rereading Up From Slavery from Booker T. Washington, and there was a quote. I had written it down, and I'm not like this big fan of Booker T. Washington or anything, but it was this quote, man, that I found from Booker T. Washington in the book, and he talked about, now he wrote that book in, I believe, 1901 or 1902, and he says that, let me read a quote that I kept from the book. It's a good read, man, and I don't agree with him on his political views, but when he talks about his economic views, he was making a lot of sense. He says that the one thing that is most worth living for and dying for, if need be, is the opportunity of making someone else more happy and more useful. And he says that there is something in human nature which we cannot blot out, which makes one man in the end recognize and reward merit in another, regardless of race or color. So he was a dude that didn't care about affirmative action necessarily. He believed that there were certain middle class values that led to success. And so he really wrapped it up on page 101 of Up From Slavery when he said, political agitation alone would not save the Negro, and that back of the ballot, the Negro must have property, industry, skill, economy, intelligence, and character, and that no one race without these elements could permanently succeed. Boom. Now, that rejects what you said. He said that in 1901, and has he not been proven right 120 years later?
Okay, expound a little bit.
Okay, what he said in terms of the culture, he was defining what middle class culture was even in 1901, and he was a black man. He was rejecting the bread and circus culture, the status culture, because he talked a lot about how embarrassing the preachers were because they didn't have proper education. They were like what he called like pork chop preachers, and he went in hard on ministers of his day because he grew up during Reconstruction. You know, he lived from 18. He was born a slave. He spent his first 8 years of his life in slavery or something like that. Then he came of age during Reconstruction. He was in college during the peak of Reconstruction, and he had a lot of negative things to say about what he saw in terms of, you know, how you give all these like feminists these degrees, right? But they're not actually getting the kind of skills to back it. And if you ask them to change a car tire, they don't know anything about anything. All they know is they got this piece of paper, and it makes them feel that they're entitled to a job. It doesn't mean that they develop skills. All it means is that somehow, some way they completed a curriculum. And I say somehow, some way, because I was a dude and I saw a whole lot of shit in college where females was fucking for term papers, okay? A lot of that shit went on in college, and we can all got to do is point to the Fort Valley State, aka prostitution ring, was just one of many kind of things that go on with females in college, fucking their TAs, just fucking to get ahead. Women use their pussy like an ATM card and a checkbook. So Booker T. Washington was pointing out in 1901 that they would not be defined by black redneck culture. So when we say black culture, what you're accepting is that the black abandoned poor class, what we call black redneck culture, defines black culture. Black culture was always a middle class culture. The black redneck class was always competing for prominence with the black culture that was aspirational and middle class in orientation. They wanted everything that the whites had, and they wanted to compete, and they wanted the resources to do it. So the battle was always between which black group was going to define black in terms of how the world saw it. Unfortunately, in our lives, we came on the worst end of this shit since slavery, where we have been defined for the last 30 years by black redneck culture. Unfortunately.
Well,
Okay, I get that, and what I'll say is I was speaking in the context of when I was saying that since the civil rights movement, there's basically been a vacuum when it comes to culture, and what has filled it is redneck culture. So when I say that, that's what they're, I guess, pushing is, or that's what they've accepted. And when people have to, I would say the more productive and enlightened of Black Americans that have achieved like millionaire status and grow and then forward, they actually had to abandon what everyone else has accepted, pretty much.
In a sense, but not completely. Because what I'm saying is that they didn't abandon anything. They rejected the intrusion of Black redneck culture into their middle class, upper class aspirational values. Blacks, there were always a group of Blacks like the brothers that built Black Wall Street, the Booker T. Washingtons, the Webb. These people have always been trying to compete and hold that middle class values, and competitiveness is what was going to make the race successful. Those Black rednecks that you're talking about, they were the ones that intruded upon the productive and competent Blacks. And that's why corporate America pushed it, because they were pushing against stable families and middle class values. So the corporate culture, they pimped on Black people and used those that had the musical talent and entertainment to enrich themselves at the expense of the Black male and the Black family image. You see what I'm saying? So we went from a culture that mostly rejected the thug shit as a definition of our culture. But since the 70s, starting with like Superfly and all that Blaxploitation, that's when they started to glamorize thuggery, drug dealing, hoeing. All that shit started with Blaxploitation, man, back in like the early 70s or whatever, with Superfly and all that shit. But that was, you know, coming out of the civil rights movement, they were talking about Black power, natural beauty. Just think about what the slogans were. James Brown, I'm Black and I'm proud. All of that stuff, they had to overthrow that culture, because that culture was a rejection of, you know, the Black redneck stuff. They were telling Black people to be aspirational, to be proud. And the America saw that shit as a serious threat at that time. They saw that as a threat because America has always mostly been a zero-sum game. Someone goes up, someone goes down. In fact, we've had less social mobility over the last 20 years in America than at any point in history. They don't talk about that, but it's all over the economic reports. We have less social mobility in 2019 than we did in fucking 1980. Okay? And they got to hide that shit. That's why they promote. Every day they tell you about some Black celebrity that he just signed a contract for $55 trillion, right? They push that real hard because the truth is there's less social mobility than ever. And especially in Black America, we're almost 10 years away or less from the Black abandoned class being locked in as a permanent poverty class moving forward, man. Unless, again, we just speculating here because things change overnight all the time. But on the current trajectory, if things will remain the same, most of Black America will be locked into an impoverished class because, as we all know, the Asian Americans are fighting affirmative action very hard, and they're putting a lot of money behind it. The state of Washington, which is supposed to be this very liberal state, they just passed one of the first state rejections of affirmative action, and it was led by Asian Americans, man.
Yeah, I kind of lost connection for some reason. Just blacked out a bit, but Supreme Cool sound like you was going to say something.
No. I'll let you. I don't want to dominate. So.
Oh no, you good, man. You good. Yeah. But no, let me play a little bit more of this snippet. Kind of go into a little bit of details with Stephen A. Smith.
The liability waiver supposedly was one thing. The other thing was that he wanted the right to videotape the workout himself. The NFL said no. Why did the NFL say no? The NFL said no because the NFL was saying, we don't do that. What we will do, however, is we will film the workout. We will give you the raw footage. And on top of it all, the edited taped version of the workout that we're sending out to all 32 teams, we'll give you that as well. We will let your representatives be on the field with you. We will let Hugh Jackson inform your representatives, your trainers, whomever, exactly what drills we're going to put you through. We will go to your agents and let them know what questions we're going to ask you so you can be prepared to answer them. All of these things were stipulated to, not to mention that Colin Kaepernick was showing up with Nike to film a commercial, and the NFL okayed that. This is according to the NFL. There are people who will sit up there and say, but Stephen A., what the hell is wrong with you? I mean, my God, he can't trust them. He cannot trust them, Stephen A. What is he supposed to do? I'll tell you what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to show up for the damn job interview. Colin Kaepernick didn't trust the NFL last week. He didn't trust the NFL last month. He didn't trust the NFL 6 months ago. He didn't trust the NFL a year ago. He didn't trust the NFL 3 years ago or 4 years ago. He's never trusted the NFL. What does that have anything to do with it? You've never trusted them. But you still want a job in their league. You don't think their word amounts to a damn thing. Still want to play in their league. You think the NFL and the teams that are under their umbrella are all trustworthy. You still invited them to come watch you work out. And why did you work out Saturday? Why did you have to have the workout Saturday? How come it wasn't a month ago of your own volition? 2 months ago, 6 months ago. Notice I didn't bring up the grievance he filed against the league. So you filed against a grievance against the league, you settle with the league, but then are coming back for a job with the league. Who gets to do that?
Only if you're defending black pathology. And that's one snippet I wanted to pause there real quick, because like he just stated, if you're complaining so much about this league, if you're complaining so much about they oppressing you, they're silencing your voice and whatnot, why then are you going out of your way to still get back in that league? But we know why, because the white man's ice is always colder.
Now, what do you mean by that exactly? You said that. I actually agree with Stephen A. more than you, because I don't think Colin Kaepernick, I don't think it's about playing football anymore, man.
Oh, no. It may not be that, but just look at the optics real quick.
Mm-hmm.
If black folks were really serious about sticking it, so to speak, to the white man, surely with having at least trillions of dollars net worth as a group, surely you could go and create your own league.
Man, they don't care about no shit like that. And we learned that from that Donald Sterling. You remember when Donald Sterling called them like he was doing that slave master shit?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the players had a chance. They had all the legal wiggle room to not go play. Remember how the whole country was calling them not to play?
Yeah.
And them dudes went out there and played, even though the federal laws of America protect them in a situation from a racially hostile environment. They already claimed that they got millions of dollars. The whole country called on those Clippers players to like boycott so they can get rid of Donald Sterling immediately. Nope. Them dudes went out there and played. You know what they did? Some stupid gesture of going to half court and like throwing a jersey. I mean,
but that's what black folks do. Black folks, all they do is protest.
Yeah.
They don't take into account, you know what, we don't need y'all. We'll just go and do our own league. We'll just go and, so to speak, create our own organization. No, we gotta protest to show everybody that we stand in unison.
That's why man, I'm gonna be honest with you, Sigma, Coon. I'm at that point, bro, like in my development, that I just hear this shit that they say and it don't have no impact on me, man. Like when I saw that the whole ADOS thing and the FBA with Tariq, they fighting, it had no emotional impact on me, man, at all. Like it was more like sitting back and watching two people fight from a distance and not calling the police, and just sitting there and just watching them fight because it don't have no impact on me, kind of thing.
Well, you know me, King Sigma. I'm at the laughing stage because it's like, man, back in the day, and that was I would say about maybe 15 years ago or not, I would sit back and be involved in the whole black thing and everything. And it was like, oh man, but you get your emotions up in a uproar. In certain ways, you get disappointed, and you see that overall, black people just don't want it. I hate to quote from the Bible in such ways, but in many ways, I felt like the Christ when he said, "So often I wanted to put my arms around you, just like a hen puts around, gathers her chicks."
Mhm.
But you all did not want it. And that's how I feel for like the talented 10th and those who are more productive and within, the black communities and so forth. The black community doesn't want them. They don't want their help. They don't want their guidance. They don't want their talents and so forth to take them to another level. They want debauchery.
See, I think
so it's not time to laugh.
And again, that's why when you guys hear me talk, I always talk about it from the four classes standpoint with Black America. That's why I love Eugene Robinson's way of breaking it down, because he gave us such a powerful lens. I just see it so different, man. I look at it through the middle class, through the talented 10th, through the abandoned poor, man. That's just how I see things, man. Like, we're so separate. If you're a Black free thinking brother, for example, I've been on enough panels now after, being in here since 2018, and I'm telling you, man, we have a whole different way of seeing the world. The kind of brothers that I talk to here, man, like, we see the world differently than 80% of the other Blacks, man. And that's just what it is. And see, the thing that's changed, and me and Obsidian had this conversation before, and I told him the difference between him and I is that he says that the problem of this 21st century is that Black men and Black women don't get along. And I told him, I see it as the problem of the 21st century is that Black men and Black women don't get along, and they no longer have they're no longer forced to. They have the option not to get along. And I think that's the most powerful, unstated aspect of what's going on in Black America overall today, is that brothers like you have made the decision that I'm not going to be held to some kind of imaginary communist American state that don't exist, never existed, and it won't exist if it's left to the abandoned poor to make it happen. If it does exist, it'll exist because of the Blacks with middle class aspirations and the Black entrepreneurial class, like the Byron Allen type people. If it's going to happen, it'll be because they want it to happen. But as far as the abandoned poor leading me anywhere, fuck all that, man. They ain't leading me no fucking where. And the fact that they, they will put more effort into Colin Kaepernick than Byron Allen's Supreme Court case. See, this is why I'm more lean towards the Black pill now, because just think about what I just said to you. You got 40 million Black Americans or whatever, and they had one of the most important Supreme Court cases in 150 years related to civil rights. And they were more concerned about Colin Kaepernick having a trial than actually getting out there and supporting that man.
Correct.
Yeah, correct.
Of course.
I mean, for me,
but you can't support Coons though. He's with a white woman.
Yeah, exactly.
See, for me, and I'm speaking for Sigma Jones here. When it comes down to the rest of the world, I definitely think more red pill. But when it comes down to Black America, I am definitely just straight Black pill. And I say that because if I wasn't Black pill, I wouldn't be talking about eugenics.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay, so if I could, both of you, could you all give me your summation of this whole Black pill thing?
Well, for me, Black pill just means the philosophy of nihilism. Nihilism means that, for the most part, that things are set. Like when I was just telling you, like how I look at the society as already on a slippery slope, and that's just based on my reading of the history of civilizations from Carol Quigley, Edward Gibbon, Plato. Them is three dudes that if you go read their books, Oswald Spengler as well. Go read those four guys' history of civilizations, and Will Durant as well. If you read enough of their writings, you will realize that this shit is cyclical, man. And it gets to a point where you've gone so far that you're not going to be able to completely stop it. So Black pill person says, okay, I've understood where we're at. I understand how all these factors are playing. And I accept that I, for the most part, can't change what's going on with the greater society at all, really. all I can do is focus on what I'm doing and not invest too heavily. You know, that's what a black pill guy would say. He's nihilistic in the fact that he accepts that he can't control things, whereas a red pill guy will still believe that he can impact change in a significant way. That's really the big difference between the two.
And
And
yourself, Sigmund Jones.
yeah, so for me, definitely I have to go back to the genetic series that I just finished off.
Mhm.
And once, and courtesy of King Sigma, because he was the one that actually got me started on the genetic series. But when I started to really look at the whole slave breeding back during slavery and how how our ancestors literally were bred to be animals, that's when I kind of realized from that point that the problem that faced Black America today literally comes down to our genetic makeup. And in order to fix it, you have to start from that genetic makeup. And the way I see it, Black folks are just not ready for that. They're not ready to do any self-reflection and realize that, you know what? There is a good amount of us that really should not be having children.
Yeah.
But to say that for that matter, it's kind of like you have to give that sort of, you really, there's going to be some loved ones that's going to be like, well, what about the children? What about allowing, the children to go and everything? But it's like, but the genetics is tainted. Sad to say, but it's the truth. And so,
Yeah.
and so for me, just that whole research in that regard, I'm just like, you know what? Until Black America changes his ways, which, I kind of see that as 90% not happening. I'm Black pill when it comes down to Black America. Now, for the individual Native Black man, be red pill. Focus on yourself. Find your niche in society or across the globe. Yeah, as far as for individualism, I'm all red pill. But as far as collective Black people, nah. There's no hope.
There's a good thing that backs up what you're saying. You know how I know that what you're saying is true is because have you noticed how much resistance you get from other Black Americans in this space when you just simply say, I want to be left alone?
Exactly.
I want to go into a safe space. So they'll say, well, I'm waving this SYSPN flag, where brothers say, I'm a pass bro. Just leave me alone. And I just want to meet with people that want to do what I want to do. And we'll have our conversations. We won't go over there where you're at. So don't come over here where we're at. They cannot help but to get all in what you're doing, even though you have no interest in what they're doing. So it's like, let's say you got 3 people, right? And you're on the playground. And there's 3 people standing there. And they're in a little group. And they're having a good ass time. Then over here, you got 100 people, and they're in one group. Think about how that looks. So all the 100 people are concentrated on these 3 people who are just in a little group, minding their own business and not worried about it. But then they get surrounded by all the other 100 people wondering, like, what are you guys doing over here? Even though it's 100 y'all, and we told y'all, we just going to go over here. We're going to hang out. We're going to do what we do. We're not bothering you. We don't want anything from you. But then instead of them figuring out something to do with themselves and 100 deep, they could figure out all kind of things that they could do together that we can't do, but they're still more focused on you. Once I started to peep how that works on this YouTube thing and how it kind of reflects what I see out here in the real world, these people, like, they don't even understand that we can see through their rhetoric, because you spend all this time worried about people that's not worried about you, and you guys are not fixing the problems that you talk about every day within your own communities, within your own families. No, you're worried about what these other cats is doing. That's a minority group. This shit is just so backwards. Everything is backwards, man, when you look at it. Like, it's very sad, because I read you that quote from Booker T. Washington, and he wrote that 120 years ago, man, fresh out of slavery and all that shit. And it's just sad that nothing's changed for the majority of Black Americans. They think the way that slaves did almost fresh off the plantation. It's a fact.
I look at it this way too, like you just pointed out. We have tried everything under the sun minus science to get black people up to modern times. Social reform, educational reform, political reform, uh, uh, healthcare reform, all this stuff you have done, and even getting black folks into prominent positions. You've done all of that, but yet and still the Negro is still going backwards. And that's when you know, yeah, this is something biological. Ain't
Bro.
no way all this reformation and you still going back as a collective group.
Explain to me how in 2019 your average 18-year-old black American has a fourth grade reading level that he reads almost at the same level as a fucking freedman 10 years out of slavery. Like, someone got to really bring that home for me, because ain't no one really brought it all the way home. But that alone tells you so much of what you need to. In an age of information, in an age of self-education, the black Americans on average are producing children in their young adulthood that are reading at a fourth grade level at a time, when there's less jobs that will be available to unskilled people, that coding will almost become like a second language 10 years from today. You got the influx of people all over the planet. You got the increase in visas to whites, and you got 5 million people waiting on the legally vetted immigrants waiting to enter America. Either they have a family member here that's already adapted to the culture, or they're being sponsored by some employer here in America. 5 million on the waiting list that are ready to come in over the next decade. I mean, and you tell these people this, and then they attack you.
Yeah, because you don't defend black pathology.
Let me know if this sounds familiar, King Sigma. This is from Will Durant's The Story of Civilization, Greece and Macedonia, page 567. Concerning its fall and decline. It says, education spread, but spread thin, as it stressed knowledge more than character and produced masses of half-educated people.
Bingo.
Yep.
There it is. I just see.
Yep.
See what I'm saying? That's what's so scary about it, bro. Will Durant, he's writing about something that happened like 2,000 years ago, but it speaks to you as if he was talking today, bro. That's exactly what Booker T. Washington was pointing out. The same thing Will Durant was pointing out is that the colleges have created a trivial education system that it's not practical. It doesn't make you a more virtuous person. It doesn't make you a more skilled person. It's a bunch of trivial education that only works for the rich class, because that's who the curriculum was created for. People that was already rich, that didn't.
When it got, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it said when it got to such a decline, this is what the state pushed at the very end. It says, he says, this is page 523, the zenith of philosophy. Authority will replace liberty in education, for the intelligence of children is too underdeveloped to excuse us from leaving them to their guidance of their own lives. Literature, science, and the arts are to be under censorship. They will be forbidden to express ideas which the counselors consider hurtful to public morals and piety.
Wow.
And what they're describing is communistic totalitarian society.
Yeah.
Because again, this is all part of a very well-known political cycle. All these philosophers and historians of note have all said the same thing. Almost every civilization since the first one, they count 24 of them usually. Usually they count 24 civilizations on the conventional academy. They count 24. And every one of them pretty much went through the same cycles. And what you're describing is exactly where we're at in the cycle in America right now. The bread and circus over actual substance in the society. And it starts at the top. So rather than deal with the problem, they just are going to create, democracy is followed by tyranny, man. And a totalitarian police state like Nazi Germany. People don't want to accept that. But democracy is the most short-lived social ordering of all of the social orders through the cycle. It's the shortest lived. In fact, Plato and Socrates hated democracy. They said it was a mob rule. They defined it as mob rule. They said that the dumbest people will become your leaders during the age of democracy. And that because eventually the dumbest will rule over the smartest, the society would destroy itself. Plato and Socrates were talking about that 2,500 years ago.
And lo and behold, welcome to Black America.
Yeah, this shit is backwards as hell, man. We are literally in a democracy. America is mob rule. Black America is mob rule. Like for real, for real. It really is.
Yeah, it is. Let me continue on with this snippet because it definitely gets interesting on the next part.
Who gets to do that? Then there's an additional backdrop to all of this. What would that happen to be? Jay-Z, rap mogul, according to Eric Reed, for the Carolina Panthers, who can't make up his mind whether or not he wants to be on First Take because he's a professional complainer, or whether or not he wants to be a safety working on stopping a run because the Carolina Panthers can't do that to save their damn life. Worst against the TD and the third worst rushing attack in football. Can't work out that. Or whether he's Colin Kaepernick's personal bodyguard, or the resident definition of what blackness is supposed to be, since he's the first one to call out people's blackness. Malcolm Jenkins is a sellout, despite the work he does in the community, because Malcolm Jenkins co-opted the movement so egregious in Eric Reed's mind that this man acts like he don't have no damn sense, goes after Malcolm Jenkins on the football field on a Sunday at 1 o'clock during the coin toss last year. That Eric Reed. Same Eric Reed that respected Jay-Z, rap mogul, some of the contributions that he's made through his music and beyond in the African-American community, some of the issues that he's been willing to attack through his music for years and years and years. Suddenly, he's despicable. And Stephen A's Mr. Bojangles. Or whatever cartoon character he put over Twitter. Because we're not marching lockstep with exactly what he thinks. Oh, by the way, this same Eric Reed that was at Colin Kaepernick's workout to support him on Saturday, but had to leave early to get back to Carolina to play for one of the oppressors.
AKA the white man's ice is always colder.
Man, I don't know. I mean, all of this to me is this. It's child. I wouldn't say child's play, but it's ridiculous because we're talking about individuals that are making millions of dollars for playing a game.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. They use terms like sellout, coon. At this point, those words have no meaning. Because I always say the black majority, they don't believe in objectivity. They don't believe in conventional in the sense that everything is based on emotion and it has to be flexible. So you and I, we know what coon really means. Coon has always meant black redneck. That's what it's always meant historically. But somehow they turned coon into Sambo and house Negro, right? But house Negro could mean something else tomorrow. So I've just noticed that with the black majority, nothing means anything. And that's why I say that that's why Black America represents mob rule. Because the mob, in a mob rule, anything that the hive decides on a given day is law. That's why it doesn't last, because it's actually it's chaos. It operates on the chaos principle. And that's why societies like that and matriarchal societies historically have never created no civilization. No civilization has ever been created through a matriarchal or gynocentric control state apparatus ever in the history. We would still be living in fucking huts if we lived off the chaos principle. That's why life was so short and brutish during that time period, when women did rule, because it's a pleasure society. It's a great society for fucking and making children. Don't get it twisted. But the problem with those kind of societies is that eventually their breeding outstrips the resource of the land because they're not using science and technology to get better yields out of the land, and specialization, separation of labor and all that kind of stuff that came out of civilization that made it so that we can control our numbers while at the same time operating with mostly a surplus in terms of like our food supply and living longer. Those things are all creatures of a patriarchal society and civilization. Period. We forget that it wasn't that long ago that the average person lived to be like 35 years old. We forget these things. That wasn't like no 10,000 fucking years ago. We're talking like maybe 300 years ago, 250 years ago, where they were still the average age of death was like 40 years old or something. Shit. What are we talking about, man? We take everything. See, that's what I was asking you guys earlier. What have women created with all this power that they've been given over the last decade? All they've done is liberalize and put themselves in a more sexually objectified position than they were in, say, 1999, right? They did that. That's all they've done when you really think about it. They haven't contributed anything new at all in 20 years of this rise to power. But what they have done, every time they come up with something, somehow it involves more and more sexualization and lowering the age of sexuality. That's all that they are contributing, which is a regressive contribution.
Well, see, that's why King Sigma, that's why I now make the argument that the problem, mainly to talk about here in America, the problem here in America, as far as the dating and mating game and marriage and whatnot, is not so much the women, it's the culture. Because as men, we have allowed, well, I won't really say native black men because we've never really been in position of power until now, but men collectively here in America, we have allowed women into power and pretty much just took a backseat to say, hey, you could do whatever you want because life is good. You know, at one point in time, we were the richest nation in the world. It was a superpower.
White
but
men,
as we got,
white men put these women in power, and initially they did it to keep black men out of corporate America and developing wealth. That's how it all started. It all started with white men cutting deals with white women to take affirmative action from black men and give it to white women. That's where it all started at, back in the, I believe, the late 60s, early 70s, when they made the deal. The white dudes running the corporations didn't want black men in their corporations or whatnot, and they made a deal that they would rather have the women in there because they thought they could control the women by the old chivalrous contract. They thought they could control them, but within like 15 years, the white woman was out of fucking control. So they didn't want the black men being economically competitive because, again, the penis envy thing, they made the right assumption that the more economically competitive black men are, the better their options are, and the more likely that their daughters will fuck those black dudes. But they were wrong, because what they found out is that putting a white woman in corporate America only made him discard most of the white men and only go after like the top 20% of all men.
And that's it, and to touch on that point too, King Sigma. See, this is where it backfired on white guys. Mm-hmm. They assume that when the women are given this extra power, that somehow they're going to remain the same as far as, you know, being submissive to their power, being loyal to, you know, whatever type of system they got going on, not realizing that just like us brothers, we know of the dark side of female nature. White guys are just now starting to see the dark side of female nature. But the thing is this, white women, and I'm just going to say it, white women have always had a thing for black men. They just waited until the right opportunity, when they had a little bit more power, to where now they could exercise those natural attractions, I would say. And then when technology started to come up especially with social media, pretty much the levees broke from that point forward. There's no point of return after that.
The truth is the levees had already broke though. And see, that's again how people in the greater society have like actually tried to pull the wool over black men's faces. I don't know if you ever heard of the black historian LaRon Bennett.
Yep, I have.
Okay, so he wrote the book Before the Mayflower. You got that book?
I've heard of it, but I need to get a copy.
You should read it. He has a lot of primary documents from like the early pre-British colonies, like showing that, you know, obviously blacks were here when the Spanish brought blacks, and it was a mutiny back in 1530. So blacks had already been here for sure in 1530s. I'm not going to get into that whole pro-black Hotep stuff about, you know, blacks was the Indian. I don't care about all that shit. I'm just using the data 1530 that's official, that we know that the Spanish had some black African slaves that ended up killing the Spanish and ran off into the woods of America back in 1530. And they started these black tribes from 1530 to when the English arrived in 1619. So during the first like 150 years of American history, from 1530 to like 1660s, remember the first slave laws in America didn't appear until the 1660s, right? But prior to that, black men and white women had been having all kind of relationship with each other, because it wasn't really no black women here. It was mostly black men, white women, Native Americans that was mating with each other. White people know this. LaRon Bennett talks about, he said that one of the things that pissed off the white dudes is that more of the white women, since it was a short supply, remember, it was very sexually competitive prior to 1650 because there were so few women available that were non-Indians, and because of their religion and their culture, white men considered it like sinful to mate with savages. We know they was fucking the Native American women, but it was not, it was shamed in their culture, and they hadn't had brought enough white women over here at that point. But the white women that were here showed a preference for the black men that were here. So they had to compete with black men from the very beginning for these women, because the black men was here before the Englishmen, like I just told you. And they already had their own thing going on with the Native women, and it had been going on for like 100 years. But when the white boys started to come over here, it was mostly just white men. There was very few women. And so when the white women did start to come over here a little bit later, they had to compete because there was no laws against black men up into the 1660s, and they had been here for like 130 years. So they were competing. They had land, you know, black men having that physical strength that they got naturally and all of that. They were better farmers than the white boys. Most of the white dudes almost died in the first couple British colonies. If it hadn't been for the help of natives and blacks, the whites would have died off in the first generation, never to be heard from. And this would have been a black and brown country today. Once and LaRon Bennett, what he does, because the colonial government had their law courts and things like that, he has all kind of first primary documents showing how many white women were marrying black men, and the white dudes was not having that shit. See, that's why you never hear me talk about white boys as our allies like that.
Oh no. I never considered them as an ally to us, because I've stated in an earlier video over at BATV, the problems that white boys face today are vastly different from the problems we face as black men. So really, it's such a different dynamic. I don't consider asking white guys for help, because first off, the problems that they have spilled over to us. So in order for most of our problems to be fixed, they got to fix theirs. And I don't expect them to fix their problem.
But even a bigger problem, they're the ones that put the American black woman before the black man.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much my point right there. Their problem was they were so against black men. They wanted to make sure that they was on the top of the food chain, that they was going to do whatever they can to make sure that we was at the bottom as far as social standing, as far as economics, as far as finances, schools, and whatnot. Not realizing that, it gave them short-term gains, but in the long run, it was going to backfire. And we're now we've been starting to see the backdrop, but white guys are now starting to see the backdrop of the problems that us black men have seen for decades now.
Well, I mean, look at another example, Sigma Jones. Think about Reconstruction, right? Okay.
Mhm.
I've studied Reconstruction real deeply because of the reparation conversation that rearose over the last year. And man, you dig into Reconstruction, the most true to form Republicans were black men.
Yeah.
Frederick Douglass, and all of those guys like Martin Delaney, they were true dyed in the wool Republicans. Who betrayed them? White men.
Yep.
They were the party of black men. They made all these promises to black men during the Reconstruction era. We're gonna give you Texas. I was gonna, well, just keep this between us on this panel, but I'm soon gonna do an upload about Frederick Douglass in the state of Texas and black reparations. Because what people don't understand is that the Republican Party at one point was gonna give the state of Texas to all the free blacks completely.
Yep.
And Frederick Douglass was gonna be nominated to be the governor of the state of Texas. And we already know how crazy that would have been because of the power that blacks would have had, because of they would have been the most numerous state if they added those 4 million blacks that were freed, and then the additional 500,000 that were not enslaved at the break of the Civil War. So it would have been about 4.5 million blacks that would have been dumped into the state of Texas in the year 1865, at a time where there were only like 2 million people in Texas, and half of them was blacks anyways. So when you look at it in terms of the electoral college, the popular vote, and how seats are allocated in Congress, can you imagine how powerful those blacks would have been from 1865 to now if the Republicans would have kept the promise that they made? So what I'm trying to say is that at every juncture, when blacks finally make a little bit of progress, they've always been betrayed by the general white society. That's just always been the case. There's always been those that have been helpful, like the white abolitionists, the radical Republicans, but they've always represented such a minority of white people that they've always been outvoted. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Supreme King Ku, you want to give a few thoughts? Because Xanatos Clutch is actually in the chat, and I'm about to send him the link to hop in. But if you want to talk more about it, you can.
Yeah. I mean, bring Xanatos up, man. I haven't gotten a chat with him for quite a while. But I mean, yeah, that would be an interesting topic, King Sigma. I've read about that. And it has a lot of nuanced, I would say, circumstances that occurred within that brief set of history. And it's interesting how many strange bedfellows that situation created.
Yeah, man.
Just to prevent that from occurring. I think that's really interesting when you do your podcast on that.
And it was Lincoln's fault. It was Lincoln's fault. Because the main bedfellow that you're referring to is Andrew Johnson. It all starts with him and that was the worst decision that could have ever happened to black Americans historically from the 1865 to today. Now, most blacks don't know that history, but when they actually go and study that history, that period, that 12-year period of radical Reconstruction, that choice during Lincoln's second term of Andrew Johnson was the worst decision that ever happened to black America, man. Because when he got assassinated, remember, there were all kinds of radical Republicans that the Republican Party told Lincoln to choose as his vice president. But he believed that he needed Andrew Johnson to reintegrate the Southern Confederates and the border states after the war would end. So Lincoln considered it a political decision. And he paid the cost of that decision with his life.
Yeah.
Because he was assassinated, and then he would be replaced by Andrew Johnson, who would be the first president of the United States ever impeached, and who was against all the black civil rights legislation, all of that shit. He was against it all. But he ended up replacing Lincoln. Now, what if he would have had one of his radical Republicans like a Charles Schumer or Thaddeus Stevens, who wanted to be vice president, and he was actually in a relationship with a black woman?
Yeah, Thaddeus Stevens would have upheld all that stuff, but
they hated him. He was literally Charles Schumer and Thaddeus Stevens were the most hated radical Republicans during Reconstruction. But the only difference was that Thaddeus Stevens didn't take no shit. Charles Sumner was one of these, effete Massachusetts guy. he got his ass kicked in Congress by that Southern Confederate and beaten with a cane to the point where he had like a disability the rest of his life, but he was a good man. But what was so great about Thaddeus Stevens, he was like a radical Republican version of Andrew Jackson or a Donald Trump type motherfucker. Like he was a dude that would kick your ass right there in Congress. They did not want him to be vice president. The South feared him because he wanted to kill all of the Southern traitors. Like he wanted to do like a Nuremberg after the Civil War and take all the land from the former slave holders and give it to blacks. And he wanted to like actually kill the leaders of the rebellion. He was no joke.
See that's the thing though, King Sigmund. As I was reading that some years ago, it kind of made me wonder. Like, you know, I was thinking kind of like you and the whole thing of, man, if he would have been there, then you know the whole thing with Frederick Douglass and Texas. But it kind of made me wonder with such a fiery temper concerning that period in history, if that would have sparked another rebellion in the South. According to how those men were at that time, I really do think that it would have.
But they did.
But that's just
spark a rebellion. We don't call it a rebellion, but how was Jim Crow apartheid not a second rebellion? That was that was total white backlash when they pulled all the military officers out of the South in the Compromise of '87. That was a second rebellion. So see, we still get that same result. So I think that Thaddeus Stevens would have been great. He may have had a hard temper, but sometimes a hard temper is required when you're dealing with hardened people. It's one of the political laws is that it's better to be loved, but if you can't be loved, it's better to be feared. You'd rather be loved than feared, but if you have to have a choice between being loved and feared, historically it's been proven that it's much better to be feared than loved. But you want to be both. That's what they call the philosopher king. The philosopher king is both loved and feared, but that's rare that someone has the character to be both loved and feared. You see what I'm saying? So you got a second rebellion. It's just that it was a one-sided rebellion. Whereas the first rebellion was two-sided. The second rebellion that lasted for 100 years was one-sided, where all of the military strength was on the side of the white Democratic KKK party. You see what I'm saying? Up until the Civil Rights Movement, when blacks non-violently rebelled on their own. But let's not act like there wasn't a second rebellion in terms of whites putting the black freed people back into a second class, basically non-class status for almost 100 more years.
Man, what's going on, Xanatos?
Mr. Xanatos Clutch.
Hey, what's good, fellas?
What's good?
Hey, what's good, fellas? You can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, loud and clear.
Hey, good. Hey, I want to shout out King Sigma for bringing up all of this factual information that you researched and read. I mean, to be honest, I pale in comparison to the research that needs to be done on my end and the reading that needs to be done on my end about the history of this country, particularly when it comes to black men, and how this all seems cyclical of what we're facing right now and what we have faced, particularly our ancestors. And to be honest, I have something, I want to bring up something up right now. Besides the fact that I want to give a shout out. I know we criticized, particularly you, King Sigma, and I don't blame you for saying that you don't see a lot of these white boys as your allies. I actually don't blame you, especially in the sense of American white men, because they have seemed to be at the forefront of everything when it comes to limiting the individual and civic liberties or civil liberties of black men in this country. And it almost has been the case since day one. But I want to give a shout out, and maybe it's just my my human side coming out, but I believe that more whites outside this country see what white American men really are. And I'm not saying all of them, definitely not. But the ones who seem to get the forefront and the voice and the power handed to them mysteriously tend to be the ones that have it against us in our best interests. Mm-hmm. But I gotta say that I know that a lot of white Europeans, white Canadians, Russians, they see American, the typical, stereotypical white American male for his attempts. And one, I'm trying to see how the Jews did back in the mid 20th century. I don't know how they did it. A lot of them, unfortunately, lost their lives over you know what. But how can we, as Black men in this country, make a case for us similar to the sentence or the way that Jewish people did in order to allow ourselves to basically disperse ourselves throughout the world like how the Jews did? Because remember, I mean, the Jews in Germany and places that were under that regime, particularly in the mid 20th century, we all knew what happened. But for the Jews who left the country, a lot of them found a lot of success, whether it was going back to Israel or going to other countries that weren't as systematically fearful and hated them, honestly. I'm trying to put my words together on the spur of the moment. But I think, honestly, I guess it's not a question of how, but why not? Why aren't we doing that strategy of following the blueprint that Jewish people throughout the world did and just going to other places where we won't be as feathered in being successful? That's just one of my many things I have to say about this.
That's a great point, bro, because I've been thinking a whole lot about that, man.
Well, real quickly, Xanatos, I have to kind of second what you just stated in your earlier approach, because to be honest with you, outside of individuals like King Sigma, maybe like an Obsidian, and perhaps in various aspects I've heard you and a couple of others, but for the most part of within the Black manosphere, I really don't get a lot of intellectual back and forth concerning Black history and so with Black people. There's white people in other countries and even Asian people in other countries that know more about Black history than Black people in this country know. So I just find it odd that that's the case, and I have to give kudos to them because, I mean, they read more. It is what it is.
Well,
and can I ask you a question? And can I ask you a follow-up question on that? How are they receptive towards you? Are they more open-minded towards you? Or are they more hostile or anxious towards you? Or because
I find an immense amount of open-mindedness. It's an exchange of ideas, an exchange of culture. I don't find this harsh resistance that a lot of people, in the community claim that, oh man, they ought to get you. They just want to sucker you in to kill you, and all this crazy stuff. I mean, a lot of my outside work, in real time, I can get contracts with these people and so forth. So I don't have that same opinion of this intense hatred of of other cultures and people. I mean,
and does this include American non-Blacks or just people who are outside the country, outside the United States, who haven't been as bombarded with the anti-Black male agenda?
I would say by far the majority outside of the country or individuals that have links outside of the country, and then a few American whites. If I was to put a percentage, I would probably say 80-20.
Well, I know as far as the Jewish question that you were asking, why they haven't done it, I think that's what's happening right now. I keep trying to tell people that we seem to not understand that this is probably the freest generation of Black men that has ever existed in the history of America. Why? Not only do we have the advantage of still having the protections of the laws that our parents had just one generation ago, but we also have the freedom that comes with this technology at a time where a person like you or I could become a millionaire just by using Bitcoin on the right day, buying Bitcoin on the right day and selling it on the right day. Everyone on this panel could be a millionaire if the right thing happens in terms of how this technology is changing rapidly every day. And if you're in the right spot at the right time, you make the right investment, you're a millionaire. We never had so much remote work possibility as we do today. So I think the reason that we hadn't had a situation similar to the Jews is because free-thinking Black men had been on the plantation even after the plantation over the last 60 years. And now That's why you're having all this conflict with the black men that are trying to leave, and those that don't want them to go, but keep telling that they do, but they won't let them go. And they're trying to create that. And we can use the Rothschilds as a perfect example and an ideal example of how this thing can go with one caveat. And to me, the caveat is that we don't have a code like the Jews did in terms of their religion.
Correct.
See, the Jews had their Judaism. No matter where a Jew is on the planet, unless he rejected his code, he had his Judaism to connect them, and his language. He had his language, and he had the Hebrew language, and he had Judaism. So no matter where he found himself on the planet, he has that in common with another Jew. The thing with Black American men, because we were created as a social experiment for America's profit purposes only, we unfortunately, and a lot of people don't like when I say this, but I actually have a prediction about 100 years from today, there probably won't be a such thing as a Black American, because what will happen is that when Black men start to disperse across the planet using the plan that you just mentioned, because they don't have a code or a shared language, they're going to be absorbed in whatever cultures that they move to. And I think that's the ultimate end, unless Black Americans were to, this is one of those speculation things again, somehow end up with like 2 or 3 states in a reparations deal. I hate going into this conversation in future terms, but that's the only way you will have a Black American population. Otherwise, Black Americans are the pontoon people of the world's population, because there is no other group like us. We are a social experiment that was created as a pontoon race, and we don't have anything keeping us together except for our shared oppression within the white dominant society. And as there's more and more immigrants coming into America, more and more integration of the races sexually, that bond disappears. And because you don't have a separate language or a separate religion, you're going to end up absorbed in these borders unless you get some kind of segregated situation where you have your own state. But since I don't see that happening, I think that we're going to end up across the board of the currently 20 million Black Americans, and knowing that 30% of those Black American men are already dating other races, I think that we're going to end up absorbed into all the cultures that you mentioned. Some going to Europe, some Black men moving to Latin America for good, some Black men staying here and integrating themselves. And there will still be like, a third of Black men that will still represent the Black Americans. But I think that number is going to shrink drastically over the next 25 years, man.
That's fair enough. And to be honest, I think I'm not going to advocate for the end of Black America, but I think that's an optimistic scenario, considering how what I consider to be more of a third rebellion against Black America is happening right now. And that third rebellion is the advent of the welfare state, and not only with white racist rebellion, but Blacks who emphasize or sympathize in a weird way with those white races in order to keep the Blacks as an underclass, meaning the Pookies, Ray Ray, Shaniquas, the Babies, kids, whoever. Because now, as I said, we are in that third rebellion. And this time, unlike the other 2 times where you knew who the enemy was and it was a different race or whatever, you have people who look like us who are in opposition of us. I mean, you had this clown who has been writing articles about the manosphere and now SYSBM. Do you all know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah. Me and King Sigma just dissected that article this past Saturday.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I wonder if we can get him in a defamation lawsuit, because what he did is basically just one. It's just 1 inch short of doxing us, in my consideration. And
well, he's coming after Mad Bus Driver on the doxing level, but where he's going to run into problem is that Slaying Evil has common law rights in their trademark, because in America we still have common law, and you can get common law and trademarks for using a certain kind of mark and it being known. So he would have defamation grounds, probably Babatunde, and Mad Bus Driver would possibly have defamation. And I actually don't even see that dude as actually a threat. I see him as like a plus, because this time
he's advertising.
Yeah, that's all it is.
But even more so, do you guys remember how CNN went after the MGTOWs last year for the first time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was. Have you heard CNN do anything else on Red Pill since that day?
Nope.
There's a reason why they didn't. After that moment, and they saw the reaction from the men. See, the problem that they have is that the side of truth, we're on the side of truth. So if CNN or these major publications was to popularize what that pansy plantation drone was saying in his articles, they would only end up doing the recruiting for SYSBM and Passport Bros. Because every black man that hears the messages, think about this thing has been going on for 12 years. There's been 2 manifestations of the Black Manosphere, and we're in a third spinoff of Black Manosphere 2.0. We're in a spinoff of that right now. It don't really have a name, but it's what Sigma Jones, Xanatos, and Kuhn and myself are doing. It's something I call free thinking brothers, but we're in a spinoff of that. So what we're saying is all based on facts. So if you put this message on television, it's game over, man. This shit is game over. Because show me any of the major red pill, what I call the 13 sectors of what's loosely referred to as Black Manosphere 3.0, loosely. It's 13 sectors, man. And that includes like SYSPM, Passport Bros, Black Peelers, Purple Pill Town Hall, Red Pill, Black Female Fuckery, yada, yada. If you go across those 13 sectors and the content creators that I put in those sectors, and you was to put their message against the black girl magic feminism and Me Too misandry, are you fucking kidding me? So this dude writing those articles, he's doing us a favor because he's bringing out the best in people like Babatunde. Babatunde was forced to do a declaration of SYSBM that I talked to him about. I said, you should do this. He does it. Boom. Now he's created a declaration of SYSBM on his site. Now there's a permanent thing that binds all black men that are attracted to that kind of liberated ideology. Now they have a starting point. So then this dude coming out of nowhere forced Babatunde to write a counter argument. Sigma Jones and I did a breakdown. It's actually bringing out the best in us, just like Passport Gate brought out the best in us, man.
Yeah.
And yeah, I completely agree with the assessment. And as far as stuff like this is concerned, I mean, yeah, this clown over here with the article himself, it's more or less incriminating on the freedom that us as thinking black men seek and desire, as does every other American. And to be honest, someone who has pragmatism and sense would read that article and have the response of what's wrong with seeking the best Stargate or the best quality of women or a lifestyle or whatever. But you have to remember, in today's date and age, we do not live in an era or a country where pragmatism and triple-digit IQ individuals rule. If that was the case, I'll be blunt. You can call this crying over spoiled milk. 2016 would not have been a freaking Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. 2016 would have been an incumbent Ron Paul going up against a Bernie Sanders. Say what you want about Bernie and his socialism, whatever, but at the very least, him and Ron Paul, for that matter, were a principle. And if you had a country of individuals who were more pragmatic, believed in principle, and voted for candidates who were actually for the interests of Americans, yeah, you would have had a much different election, regardless of who would have won. So what I'm trying to say is this. We live in a country, like you stated before, of democracy. And who rules in democracy? The dumbest among us, regardless of race.
Yeah, and democracy in its most hardened form is communism. That's all it is. Communism is another form of, it starts as democracy, but then eventually, in order to control the mob, they suspend all like private rights, like the communist suspends all ideas of privacy, and it evolves from a democratic state like what we're in now. We're a constitutional republic, but in terms of where the culture is at and how the dumbest get the most attention and they're the loudest and they're being promoted and validated, we're in a democratic moment. So I also lean heavily between independent and libertarian. So I'm like right in the center of those two ideologies, but that's not where America's at. I don't know if it will be able to put the brakes on it and have a moment like that. But as far as where we're at right now, I don't know. When you talk about your three fates, I just feel that we're in that situation. And that's why I guess I'm kind of moving towards a black peel in terms of American culture, because I know I can get what I want out of America. I always have and I always will. But in terms of like when you talk about the black majority, man, I just don't see it, bro. Just seeing the reaction to this whole Kaepernick thing. Black,
The mere fact that everybody is trying to say that, he's still being blackballed, even though the NFL just gave him an opportunity, just like in an interview, he didn't show up. At some point, you have to take accountability. And that's why I titled this stream "When Victimhood Trumps Accountability," because Black America, they just believe that living a victimhood gives you further than taking self-responsibility, actually being reflective and saying, you know what, I need to do something different. I need to go and see, maybe I should stop trying to do plan A, maybe see what plan B does or plan C. Because obviously plan A, I keep trying to do it over and over and over, but nothing is changing.
Well, I don't know.
Well, I mean, that victimization route is much easier and kind of like steering to a little bit of what Xanatos stated earlier. Again, I'm just quoting from William Durant again. Again, this is from his book about Greece, page 603. Notice this. He says, throughout all of the turmoil of the time that the Jews, and he's talking about during their transitional state between Greece and Rome.
What year is he referring to?
He's referring to the latter years of Greek society during its decline. Right?
So AD? Was this AD?
Yeah.
BC?
Right when Rome was about to take over.
So is that BC or AD?
It should be BC. The latter years of what's that? Right before the first century.
I was going to say, yeah, the Greeks had their reign a little bit before AD kind of transitions.
Now Rome, how long was Rome Empire?
Let's see. We're going.
They collapsed in 500 or so AD. They collapsed in like 500 or so AD. That's why I was trying to get the year down that you're talking about, because Rome collapsed in like 530 AD when they were invaded by the barbarians or something like that. And that set in stage the Dark Ages. So I was trying to figure out what year was it that they transitioned. Because
they came to prominence. I believe right around 90 BC.
So that means that they were collapsing probably around like 200
correct
BC or something like that. So we're talking about 2,200 years ago.
Correct.
Okay.
And notice his statement. He says, throughout all the turmoil of the time of the Jews maintained their traditional love of scholarship and produced more than their share of the lasting literature of the age.
That makes sense.
So again, when you compare that against what we're dealing with so far as Black America, Xanatos, when you don't have individuals that actually have a love of scholarship or see value in learning history, the arts, math, science, so forth, this is what you get. So the comparison between the two is very difficult because, again, the majority of the group but in Black America does not have that close tie to learning.
I would like to know, what I've been trying to do some research on. Maybe you brothers got some information that can give me a good lead. I've been trying, because I just told you my theory that most of Black Americans, if things continue on the current trajectory, are going to be absorbed into other groups. I really, truly do believe that. I've been trying to find out, there's obviously nothing is new. So I want to know what other ethnic groups, there has to be a group in the history of the last 3,000 years, for example, that was in a very similar situation as Black Americans And I'm trying to find those groups and what happened to them. If you guys got any leads, I want to know about ethnic groups and nationalities that completely disappeared from history. It's a very esoteric topic, and it ain't a lot of information out there. But I know someone has to have some leads on different ethnic groups. We ain't the first, even though we're the current only group like ourselves on the planet now. There has to, in other civilizations, because we're a product of Western Christian civilization, which is at its end point. See, we're at the end point of Western Christian civilization, and it was preceded by things like the Persian Empire and those other civilizations prior to this one. So this is its own unique moment in time. Western Christian civilization represented by the Greeks, the Carthage, the Romans, and now the United States, and this modern era of capitalism, industrialization, all that. We represent a transitional phase into what I think is going to become Asian supremacy, right? So I'm trying to find out in those other civilizations what ethnic group had a very similar situation to us, because I'm gonna find the history eventually. I'm gonna present it, but I need some leads because I know that there's other groups in prior civilizations of the 24 that we know of that were just in the same situation as us. And then there's the groups that were like the Jews who were able to last for those thousands of years because, again, they had a shared language that was not extinguished by their oppressive dominant society, and they still were allowed to keep their book of religion that they brought with them into those hostile territories. What makes us so different, all of that was stripped of us completely. That was the difference between Black Americans.
Yeah. But I will state this though, even when you throw in the whole idea of the Jews, they did like you stated, keep a language in certain ports, but I think that was around the time of Babylon and Persia. They were dispersed throughout, and many of them picked up several different languages from all over. So a core of them did keep the language, but the rest of them respected that core was, I would say, they respected them for keeping a hold of those traditions. Now, when it comes to us, again, being totally stripped of that, I think what has to be done is the bringing of something new. And if you don't do that, it's like, how do you even begin to build if you don't build your own culture?
I think that's what the Black Manosphere has represented over the last 12 years. I think that's what SYSBM, which is SYSBM and Passport Bros, strike fear in the hearts of the people that you're talking about, because that's what they're trying to do. I think that they've agreed that we're going to create something new from scratch based on our shared values, and that just is what it is. And I think that's what those type of brothers are trying to do. They're trying to create their own new culture and identification based on their values that they believe represent like upward mobility and success. I think that's what's going on right now. I think that's the phase that we're entering in this next decade, 2020 to 2030. That's what I believe, at least.
Absolutely. Well, fellas, I know it's kind of starting to get a little bit late and all, so we're going to start wrapping this up. Definitely appreciate you guys coming on and everything. That's why I love having these types of discussions, because I'm a history junkie, especially World War II. I was just talking to Paul Bryant in the chat that next year I'm going to start doing a little bit of World War II type of podcast, because I'm always one where if you want to know what's going to happen in the future, learn from the past. And to be stuff like that is you have to search what's happened in the past in order to know what's going to hold up in the future. So with that being said, Xanatos Clutch, since you came in, you'll start off with the last remarks.
Right now, I pretty much have nothing to say except for salute to you guys for fighting the good fight, especially against what I consider again to be the third revolt, which is a combination of those outside our race who don't want to see us free, as well as those from within our race who want to see us stuck on the plantation. But you all have my support, and where this fight goes, until we all reach the day and the place where we can all be considered free.
Absolutely.
All right, salute to you, Xanatos Clutch, man. We gotta do that panel sometime next year, man, because we going into this election year. I really want to do that panel with you about your three fates and compare it to disintegration and Mr. Research theory about the separation. So we gotta definitely plan some next year sometime.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Xanatos definitely will keep in touch, man. You take care.
And
you too.
man, Xanatos, man, he doesn't know it, but my very next video, he actually keys off at the very beginning. He had a clip a while back where he said, "Man, you're freaking war heroes." So I'm leading off with that one, man.
Yeah, going ahead and use it.
Sound clip on the go.
Yeah.
But to kind of close out too, yeah, the whole thing with the Colin Kaepernick thing, I think it's just black people being black people, wanting to, use victimization as a main talking point. Because, I mean, just be honest, man. I right now the collective IQ of our people isn't very high, and it's more emotional based, and I think that's where right now the culture wants to, or black redneck culture wants to keep things. So far as the separation piece that King Sigma's talking about, I really do think that Eugene Robinson is on to something with the the four classifications. However, I still only go by two classifications because I think that at the end of the day, if you're going to have separation, you're going to have to deal with the ultimate question of, no matter what class you're in, are you actually going to separate from individuals that may be in your family or may be friends or may have some connection to you that are of the black redneck class? And I think that's going to be the ultimate question that's going to determine the fate of Black America, because I really do feel as though no matter what class they're in, especially those upper three tier, you're going to have individuals that still want to connect themselves with black redneck culture. And I think you take individuals like Jay-Z, Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, those type of individuals.
Oh, some people in the manosphere.
Correct.
But
that are on this upper tier, and they still want to connect with the lowest of the low.
Nah, don't be fooled, man. Barack Obama ain't connected to no black abandoned class. That shit is all optics, bro. Jay-Z, he left the hood far behind. Don't let them fool you with the optics. What they do, they just pimping on the abandoned poor because it's very profitable to them, but they ain't connected to them at all, man. Jay-Z is damn near. I'll make a bet with you right now. 5 years from today, Jay-Z will be in the Republican Party. 5 years from now, you'll hear him openly talking about he's a Republican. Mark my words.
And I'll make a friendly wager with you, King Sigma. I know you said the whole thing about China and its dominion rising in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll go out and say it right now. I don't think it's gonna happen. And I know people are gonna say this is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I actually feel as though the United States is going to, within its decline, it's actually going to push its power into the UN and try to use the UN as a puppeteer.
That's a very good theory. I wouldn't be shocked if that was a scenario at all. That's
because I really do believe as though they see the decline occurring, and that it will be more profitable and a way to kind of control things through the UN and have the backing of the world, instead of trying to push the idea of America, which there's just too many countries that do not like America anyway.
Yeah.
So in other words, in a way, you kind of see where the America is going to try to paint China as the new Germany of old on a public stage using the UN. I never thought
Correct.
of it that way. Bro, you just have me kind of go in circles right now in my mind, like history repeats itself.
See, I've always saw another scenario. I've always saw a scenario that I think that is a low key threat that I looked at it. I'm just talking about from an IQ standpoint. Doing the research on nation IQs, what stood out to me is that the 5 top nations IQ are all Asian nations, and I was speculating in myself, like, okay, in this 4th industrial age, just a speculation, what would the world look like if China, Japan, Korea, and Singapore and those countries organize themselves to their own union? How would that impact world politics? Well, I do experience like that all the time, but that's what I'm more like. Everyone's talking about China standing alone, but considering how far ahead those Asian nations are in their masses, just as far as their genetic breeding, they're breeding upward. They're using eugenics in a positive way, so their IQ is above the European nations, way above the colored nations. So one has to wonder what would ever happen if Japan, China, and Korea created like their own like union, man.
So you're almost talking like an expansion of ASEAN or ASEAN.
Yeah. Back in World
okay.
War II, they call it the Great Asian Prosperity Sector. See, the problem with that though is, and this was just caught my attention from a recent documentary. There's actually a bit of an inner war going on in Asia right now. You have China, South Korea. They're all against Japan. Japan feel like they're still better than China and Korea, and now you have countries in the Southeast Asia who feel like China is, about to become another colonial power and try to take over them. So right now, it's a bunch of infighting going on that is very hard for me to see them uniting under one thought.
Or they can get conquered under one thought, because the one thing that people have to deal with is that China, from my understanding, has like a 40 million person strong bachelor army, is what I'm hearing.
That's true.
And that's some dangerous shit if you think about it, bro. That's like taking the entire Black American population with just all bachelor men. Bro, come on, man. They're going to be needing wives. So I'm telling you, boy, I think that Japan, if it doesn't become part of the United States or Russia, this is just a prediction, but I have a feeling that because of their lack of increasing their birth rate, I think that Japan is entering a death phase of its ethnic group, and they're going to end up being becoming like, how Hawaii became part of the United States? I think Japan is going to become a part of another nation because they have a lot of beautiful fucking women there. And you got a place like China with 40 bachelors that would love to go conquer Japan. You dig?
Yeah, you ain't lying about that.
Were you going to say something?
Oh no, I was just laughing. But I do have my own theory on, and actually just throw another curveball at you all. If America tried to paint anyone as a rising Germany, I mean, it would be the last country to speak, because those countries could easily point at the Black American population and say, "Look who's the real N-word Germany." And it's not the N-word, but the other N-word, the 4-letter N-word.
But they've already done it, though. They've already done it with the UN resolution on reparations and racial terrorism. You can look it up. The UN did a whole report that's approved by the entire UN, going at the United States saying, you are a country of racial terrorism and you mistreat Black people. And Korea used that propaganda against America as well when they were having their little spat, North Korea, where they said, they silenced the United States, saying that, how are you going to talk about us and human rights when you do all that oppression against Black Americans? This was all in the last 2 years. So
even China used the same talking point too against America.
Right. See, that's why I think that they're ultimately going to breathe some type of power towards the UN and try to use it as a puppeteer, because from that, kind of like from behind the scenes, then they could take the quote unquote humanitarian role and say, hey, we're taking the lead in trying to unite nations.
Well, here's the thing about it. Even if they do that, do you think some of these countries are really going to fall for it? I mean, even if they're part of the UN, they would rather go at it alone or leave the UN than become a covert puppeteer state of America. And as far as these other countries who are using the propaganda of America being the racial terrorists, I mean, to be honest, I think the one thing that's really holding those countries back, like your China's and your Russia's, is their anti-black, or should I say anti-foreign sentiment of their own. Because if they implemented what the United States did in the 20th century and bringing like successful Jews here, which helped America a lot to get to where it is today. I mean, let's not, blacks built this country and we helped them too, but we helped a lot. But I mean, there are some other groups along the way who helped made America what it is today. But if those countries could utilize the Black American population, and to be honest, this is my the side that believes that we should be less free agents than anything else until the United States treats us like Americans. And I don't mean just in several libertarian states. I mean throughout the entire country. I honestly think that if the world took that approach and allowing us to come in, particularly the best among us, to immigrate and become a part of their country, I think that could really light a fire under America's ass to get its shit together, or at least as much as it can. But that goes back again to the current black population, which I think America did a good job of dumbing down, because they probably foresaw this happening, in that if we had the blacks of the 1960s being targeted constantly well into the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the world's going to be like, oh crap, these are hardworking, industrious people that you're just throwing away. Bring them to our country, bring them to our nation. And if we lived in the world like that, then the blacks would be there with the Jews. We'd be you would have, the debate would be who's the real chosen people, honestly. I mean, we probably have people who would hate us, but it would be for the right reasons, because they think we rule the world along with Jews or something like that.
The only thing I disagree with you on that one, Xanatos, is that the UN part I 100% agree with, but this is the one part you keep forgetting out. So if you got the UN to do what you just proposed, here's the part that's the reality. What happens when those black men go to these different nations and see the most beautiful women they ever seen in their life? You really think they're going to stay with all those ADOS women? Come on, man.
No, that's not going to. No,
you sound like one of those blacks right now. Like, yeah, we're gonna go to these countries, and these black dudes are gonna stick to the Wakandan code. Let's be honest, man. That's
why I don't take any of these guys seriously that defend these ADOS women, and I'd be like, bro, spend at least a month in another country.
I mean,
and be around any type of females over there, and then tell me you still gonna be loyal to the Black Queen.
That would be an experiment, though, like, because we know that there's like 20 million black men or so, right? That would be such a great experiment to do, as Xanatos is saying, like, because the United Nations, let's say that we took like a quarter of the population of Black American men and sent them to a variety of Latin American countries, another 25% and sent them to Africa, another 25% and sent them to like the different European countries and kept 25% here. Man, that would be like the greatest social experiment to see how everything turned out like 100 years later, because you ain't gonna sit there and bullshit with me, Xanatos. You send me to East Africa. Just give me my reparations check of $250,000 and send me right to Addis Ababa. You telling me you don't think that those Black Americans backed by like the United States, we're going with our conversion will be in gold. Let's say all those black men got the reparations, which would, the current offer is 17 trillion, right? Mm-hmm. And they were converted to gold. We all converted our shit to gold. We would be like the elites in every nation that we went to, especially us that are the more educated ones. You sitting there telling me that you think the majority of those dudes, that the 75% that leave America, that they're gonna keep that 8-ounce woman? You think so?
Here's where I have to back up my plan. My plan never consisted of Adolf swimming.
Oh, okay. So you was leaving them from the very beginning.
Hey,
Hey, that's Xanatos Clutch for you.
and look, here's the thing. I'm all for that plan. I mean, and that's the reason why I angst at what Black America has become, because we could never pull this off at this point, because the majority of Black America consists of mush mouth and swag hags. I mean, whether you act like you're from the plantation or from the streets, I mean, that's a Black American image. Hell, Black Canadians have a better time of pulling off of what I propose, and they don't have nearly as much of a systematic target on their backs in Canada. I mean, like, Black Canadians are just sitting good. All they have to worry about is the freaking weather and if their hockey team's doing good, whatever. But yeah, as far as Black America is concerned, if we had the Black Americans in the 1960s, whether you were on the integration side or the Black economic side, yeah, and if we were targeted still systematically, especially how we were during Jim Crow before, if that never changed, then we would have an argument of being political refugees with skill, with talent. And yeah, as I said, like, you know, the pro blacks at the time, true pro blacks, the Black Panther, the Malcolm X kinds, they would go to Africa or other countries that would embrace them. The more integrationist kinds probably go to like Europe, Latin America, Asia. The light skinned ones probably go to Latin America. But yeah, and yeah, trust me, it would be a wrap. It would be a wrap, and I think that would probably be the worst nightmare of the American white supremacists. I mean, that would be like,
yeah, that's deep. You see, you're right. If you leave the women behind, I mean, I'm telling you, man, I've thought about the same thing that you thought about. It's been on my mind a lot lately, because I've just come to the conclusion that I'm not Martin Luther King, I'm not Malcolm X, I'm not W. Du Bois. All of them men was far smarter than I am, and they couldn't even solve this problem. Have you ever thought about that? That
Oh yeah,
our greatest thinkers of Black men thought they had the solution, and they did not have the solution, and they're way smarter than I am, for sure. So I said, well, what is the one thing that they haven't tried? None of them have tried expatriation with their a certain amount of gold, because you'd have to get gold. So if we can get a reparations deal, we make a deal. I keep telling these hoteps, y'all think that if you get reparations that it's going to improve. I think it's going to make things even worse for y'all, because those thinking brothers are gone.
Plus, once you get reparations, you know, rest of America is no longer entitled to you for anything.
Nope.
You're on your own.
And they're going to bring in new immigrants, because they're going to say, hey, we made that deal with y'all. Now we're about to bring in all these different immigrants from around the world, make the best of it. So like I said, I want my shit converted to gold. So if it's $250,000 per qualified person, give me my $250,000 in gold, and I'll pick somewhere, either East Africa, Canada, you know what I'm saying, Japan or some shit like that, and I'm ghost. So you guys can populate the race. I'm going wherever the fuck I want to go with my gold platinum bars. I'm out.
yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, best case scenario, you'll find me having some condominium in Canada somewhere. But
you know what
my operations will be outside of this continent.
SYSBM and Passport Bros, I have a feeling about this. If this thing can continue growing like it's growing, I got a feeling that this is going to lead to expatriation communities over the next decade. I got a real good feeling about it.
Oh yeah,
I've been noticing that when I talk to brothers that travel, they all mention about 6 countries. Like, I hear Germany in Europe, then I'll hear like Toronto in Canada and Vancouver, and then I hear in Asia, like I hear a lot of brothers say they want to go to Thailand, Japan, and the Philippines. That's the most common I hear. And then you got a lot of brothers that go to Dominican Republic, Brazil, and Colombia. I would not be surprised that it's 10 years from now that some kind of expatriate communities from these digital spaces that popped up in the world based on our conversations.
And these expatriate communities, let's not get this twisted. We can't have these expatriate communities be a bunch of bojangling mediocre Negroes who are there on some trick tourism tour.
Nah,
I'm talking about those who are doing it with women who are legal. But regardless, that they're bringing that same old Negro mentality, talking about some, hey, yo, I got big booty.
Hell no.
No, we can't have give her that
Other
shit.
countries will shut that down before it even gets planted.
They're all going.
Well, it's already been planted in the Dominican Republic and Brazil. I mean,
Yeah,
at least from hearsay.
that's why I'm not gonna go there. See, and we're all just doing a little theoretical. That's the one reason why I won't go to Brazil and Dominican Republic, because I know that the guys you're talking about, that's where they're gonna go. I'm going wherever they're not at. Yeah. So if we all sit in a meeting and we're having like a delegation, so like let's say we do like our own black version of a reparations Congress, and everyone's talking and shit, they make this deal. Wherever they niggas say they going, I'm going the exact opposite continent. I'm out. Call me a coon, call me a sellout, call me a weak ass Negro, whatever you want to. Wherever you niggas is going, I'm going the opposite direction. Wherever the free thinking brothers is going, I'm gonna put my money with them. We can buy up some property wherever we at. We can agree on a couple places. I'm going there, but where the niggas is going, they ruin everything.
See, that's why, like, to me, I'm just a big fan of Japan, because it's a good place for brothers, but if you are a nigga, forget it. They won't tolerate it over there.
And I think that's what we need to find, are places that can differentiate between thinking black men and your typical mediocre Negro or bebe kid, grown-ass bebe kid. Because that when I emphasize, and I'll give you just a short analysis of states where I like, the states that I tend to like don't tend to be states that lean one way or another politically, but it's those states who can differentiate between they implement the Chris Rock principle, blacks and niggas. I mean, you have states that are like, yeah, we hate all blacks, or you have states that are mostly in the liberal side that are like, oh, we prefer ghetto blacks over thinking blacks because they're intimidated over thinking blacks and they're more comfortable with the Pookie image. But you do have some states that if you aren't a nigga, they'll give you a chance. They'll overlook any racial bullcrap that they've been programmed with or they've been told to believe by the media. There are states that are out here that are like that. States, cities, metropolitan areas. There aren't that many in America, trust me. And they're trying to dwindle that with the far leftism and the far rightism that they're pushing down the throats of Americans. But I would say if you have to stay in this country for a bit longer just to get your money up, and if you can, just move to one of those places where if you aren't a nigga, then they'll give you a break at the very least.
I got a little secret, man. This female that I was dealing with from Japan, man. She was telling me about this shit called hentai, right?
Hentai?
So this hentai and anime, right? So she kind of put me on. She's a jazz singer, and she's from Japan and shit, and we got involved. And she introduced me to that shit. And so I kind of found out about these other websites, right, with this Japanese adult women entertainers. And I'm gonna be honest, man, that shit turned me into like a little fetish up in this motherfucker. I was like, when I started seeing that they had like these beautiful, feminine, slim, thick looking fucking Japanese women, I knew for a fact that one of the next countries that I was going to was definitely, it's something about, I saw this documentary, maybe you guys saw it, and it had this black man, he works in the media, he's like a reporter out there in Japan, but he's from here, and they were interviewing him, and he had his like kimono on and shit. And then he was talking about how like he can leave his door open over there, and the dude was like in his 50s or early 60s, and he was just having the best time of his fucking life living in Japan. He had been living in Japan like 17 years. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. There was a documentary, it was on YouTube, and they was interviewing black folks in Japan. And one of the people that they interviewed was this older black man, and he got his job working for a media company here in America that sent him over there, and he said he never came back. And he was just describing what it was like being a black man living in Japan. And I felt something inside of me, like, because being in America, man, you're so beaten down as a black American man on all sides. I could feel his freedom. Like I could feel what he was saying about his freedom, man. So
I'm telling you, man, as somebody who just came back from over there, why you think I'm already trying to save up to make another trip, and a longer trip at that?
Oh man, I'm not mad at you, bro. But I'm about to get ready to get off. I just want to make my last comment on Colin Kaepernick before I get off and let you gentlemen
Yeah.
Sleep. I would just say that, I ask anyone that hear this question, what exactly did Colin Kaepernick's quote unquote false kneeling campaign do for you versus what it did for him? Who really won? Did it improve the conditions of the Black social justice warrior movement because he was forced into glory? No. But I know that he got himself a settlement, which was like a severance package of like 4 to 5 million. He also ended up getting a Nike endorsement, all without playing any fucking football. I don't know what world you dudes in, but that sounds like a damn good deal to me. Getting like up to like a $5 million settlement with the NFL, and also getting an endorsement from Nike without having to do or say anything for 3 fucking years. That sounds like a fucking come up. And we know what his benefits are. We know on paper how Colin Kaepernick benefited from all of this digital social Twitter activism. But please show me how Black Americans, the Black American majority that behind him benefited at all. Jay-Z benefited from it. Jay-Z was an indirect beneficiary. Colin Kaepernick benefited. But explain to me how the Black majority that got Twitter fingers, show me one example of how they benefited from what Colin Kaepernick did. And with that said, thank you for having me on, Sigma Jones. Glad talking to you, Xanatos. Shout out to the remaining viewers, and salute to the brother Coon for coming through. And we're going to definitely do this again, but you guys have a good night.
You too, man. As always, we'll catch you next time.
All right.
Xanatos, you're the last one. I know we went round robin, but hey, if you got another last words, feel free.
Oh yeah, I'm just about to head out, but thank you for having me on once again.
Thank you, sir. Until next time, we'll be in touch. So, fellas, yeah, we're wrapping it up now. There's information with Colin Kaepernick and whatnot. One thing's for sure, the mainstream media is catching hold of what's going on in the Black manosphere. We haven't too long, me and King Sigma dissected one Simps article, and now you just heard earlier tonight some of the talking points from Stephen A. Smith that pretty much mirrors exactly what we've been talking about over here in the Black manosphere. So we're definitely making headways. Brothers, you just have to be about your business, keep doing you, and, make the best of life. Because when it's all said and done, the only person you can save is yourself. So with that said, I'm Sigma Jones. Till next time.